I went to the repair shop to have my son's sedan checked. The shopkeeper, a man I'd known for over 20 years, suddenly grabbed my hand and whispered desperately, "Get your grandchildren out of town tonight. Don't ask any questions, just go." When I pressed him for the reason, he tremblingly led me to the trunk, lifted the spare tire to reveal a locked briefcase. Inside that briefcase was something more horrific than I could imagine. Something that shattered everything I knew about my family. I'm glad you're here. Before we dive in, drop a comment for me. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love? Your answer might help someone else. Just so you know, some details in this story are fictionalized for reflection, but the core message about protecting family is what I hope stays with you. Vernon Reyes gripped my arm harder than necessary and pulled me toward the back of his garage, away from the Monday morning sunlight streaming through the bay doors. "Lawrence, we've known each other 20 years, he said, voice low and tight. "I need you to trust me right now." At 60 years old, I had spent 22 years as a federal police inspector before retiring 4 years ago to a quiet life near my son's family in Cincinnati. I knew the difference between routine concern and genuine alarm. Vernon's hand trembled against my sleeve. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Is it the transmission?" Vernon Reyes, 61 and weathered from decades of engine oil and hard work, had run the garage on Madison Avenue for 23 years. He'd serviced my vehicles, my son's vehicles, even taught Sterling basic engine maintenance when he was 16. I'd never seen fear in his eyes before today. "I wish it was the damn transmission," he muttered. I'd brought Sterling's sedan in that morning for a routine inspection before his Boston business trip. My son had asked me to handle it while he finalized client presentations. Simple favor. Ordinary Monday. The smell of motor oil and old coffee filled the workspace as Vernon led me past 2 cars on lifts, past his cluttered desk, to the service bay in the back corner, where Sterling's black sedan sat with its trunk open. "You asked me to check everything," Vernon said, "so I checked everything." He knelt beside the trunk, pushed aside the floor mat, and lifted out the spare tire with both hands. Underneath, where the tire well should have been empty, sat a custom-fitted compartment I'd never seen before. Vernon's hands shook as he reached inside and pulled out a locked briefcase. "I've got locksmith tools," he said, "for when customers lose their keys. I shouldn't have opened it. But something felt wrong, Lawrence. Really wrong." The briefcase clicked open. Inside, stacked in neat bundles secured with bank bands, sat what I immediately recognized as approximately $200,000 in cash. 50s and hundreds. Clean, organized, deliberate. But the money wasn't what made my chest tighten. Beneath the cash lay 2 photographs, school pictures. Isla, 6 years old, with her gap-toothed smile and butterfly hair clips. Remy, 4 years old, clutching the teddy bear he'd named Mr. Patches. My grandchildren. Thick red circles had been drawn around each of their faces in marker. The sound of a pneumatic wrench echoed from the front of the garage. A radio played classic rock somewhere. Normal Monday sounds. But I was staring at something that made 22 years of federal investigator instincts roar to life in my skull. "I've seen a lot in this garage," Vernon said quietly. "Drugs in door panels, stolen goods in wheel wells, guns under seats, but never this. These circles," I heard myself say. My voice sounded distant, clinical, the investigator's voice that kept emotion locked away so evidence could be processed. "I've seen this before, in trafficking cases." Vernon's face went pale. "Your grandkids, Lawrence. Why would Sterling have these?" In 22 years as a federal inspector, I'd marked evidence photos with red circles myself, identifying victims, tagging suspects, flagging targets for surveillance teams. Standard procedure for case files that needed priority attention. But I'd mark criminals, traffickers, suspects who'd hurt children, never children themselves, never my own blood. I picked up Isla's photo with hands that had stopped shaking years ago during my first crime scene. The red marker was fresh, recently. The circle around her face was precise, deliberate. Someone had taken time with this. Someone had looked at my granddaughter's school picture and marked her like merchandise. "There's more," Vernon said. He led me to his office, a cramped space that smelled like cigarettes he'd quit 5 years ago and paper that needed filing. His computer screen showed Sterling's car diagnostic interface. Vernon clicked through menus with practiced efficiency until he reached the navigation history. "I shouldn't have looked," he said. But the briefcase made me suspicious, so I checked the GPS system. The screen was filled with location data. Dates, times, addresses. Sterling told you he was going to Boston this week, right? Vernon asked. Chicago, I said. Chicago this week. Denver last month. Boston 3 weeks ago. Vernon shook his head. The car hasn't left Ohio in 2 months. He scrolled through the navigation history. Every Tuesday and Thursday night for the past 3 weeks, Sterling's car had been driven to the same address. Not his office. Not a client meeting. Not a hotel near the airport. A residential address in a suburb I didn't recognize. Arrival times between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. Return trips always before dawn. Same place, Vernon said. Over and over. Whatever he's doing there, he's doing it at night. And he's lying to you about where he goes. I thought about every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 weeks. The nights Sterling called from hotel rooms, describing business dinners and client negotiations. His voice was relaxed, conversational. He'd asked about the kids, asked if I'd watched the game. Normal father-son phone calls while he was traveling for work. All lies. Every single word. Lawrence, Vernon said carefully, what are you going to do? I stared at the screen, at the address that appeared again and again in my son's secret navigation history, at the pattern of deception that stretched back weeks, at the $200,000 in cash and the photographs of my grandchildren marked like targets. Text me that address, I said. Vernon's phone buzzed in my pocket 30 seconds later. I pulled it out and looked at the street name I didn't recognize in a suburb I'd never visited. My son had built an entire second life in the shadows, and I had been too trusting to see it. The question wasn't whether to investigate that address. The question was what I would find when I got there. I sat in my living room with my laptop, open fingers hovering over the history logs I'd pulled from the car's navigation interface back at Vernon's garage. I needed more than one data point. I needed a pattern. I needed more than one data point. I needed a pattern. Emergency tracking in case of accident or theft. I joked that he was too paranoid. Now I understood he'd wanted me to see exactly what he wanted me to see. The address of Vernon's garage still glowed on my phone screen, but I needed more than one data point. I needed a pattern. I needed proof that the cache and the photographs weren't some terrible misunderstanding. The GPS history loaded slowly. 3 weeks of location data. I started with September 3rd, the Tuesday Sterling had called me from what he said was a Chicago hotel room. He'd told me about deep dish pizza and a client dinner that ran until midnight. The GPS coordinates said otherwise. Millbrook Lane, Cincinnati. Arrival 9:47 p.m. Departure 1:23 a.m. I clicked forward. September 5th, Thursday. Boston overnight, Sterling had said. Conference meetings and Harbor View accommodations. Millbrook Lane, Cincinnati. Arrival 9:31 p.m. Departure 2:04 a.m. September 10th. Denver client presentation. Millbrook Lane, same address. 10:15 p.m. to 1:47 a.m. I scrolled through 12 entries in total. Every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 weeks. 3 cities he'd never visited. 12 conversations where he'd described hotel lobbies and business dinners and flights that never existed. His calendar showed fake meetings with clients whose names I recognized from his legitimate work camouflage built on real relationships to hide whatever happened on Millbrook Lane between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. 3 weeks, 12 trips. 12 lies told to my face with the easy comfort of a man who never expected to be caught. The entry twist settled into my chest like concrete. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was systematic deception with the cache and marked photographs as evidence of something far worse than infidelity. I closed the laptop and stood. The investigator in me knew the next step. Surveillance, observation, gather intelligence before making contact. But the grandfather in me saw Isla's face circled in red marker and wanted to drive straight to Sterling's office and demand answers. I chose the investigator. At 6:30 that evening I pulled onto Millbrook Lane in a suburb I'd never had reason to visit. Upscale homes set back from the road, mature trees, quiet streets where neighbors minded their business and security systems kept watch. The address sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a 2-story villa with stone facade and tinted windows. Sterling's black sedan occupied the driveway next to a silver SUV I didn't recognize. Lights glowed behind curtains on the second floor. Shadows moved past the windows. 2 people, maybe 3. I parked 200 meters back, engine off, and watched. 22 years as a federal inspector had taught me the discipline of patience. Evidence, first confrontation, second. Build the case before making the arrest. But this wasn't a case file with a number and a suspect I'd never met. This was my son inside that villa, doing something that required $200,000 in cash and photographs of his own children, marked like trafficking targets. Every instinct I had screamed to walk up that driveway and break down the door, demand to know what he'd become, demand to know if Isla and Remy were safe. But I'd taught rookies the same lesson for 2 decades. Emotion clouds judgment. Judgment gets people killed. Follow the protocol. I had taught Sterling to drive in a car very much like this one when he was 16. Taught him to check his mirrors, signal his turns, follow the rules. Patient instruction in a high school parking lot on a Saturday morning. He'd been nervous about the driver's test. I told him confidence comes from preparation. Now I was using those same surveillance skills to track his lies. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife, Catherine, asking when I'd be home for dinner. I typed a quick reply about running errands and set the phone down. Then I remembered something Vernon had mentioned at the garage, a second phone number that had appeared in Sterling's car records, a number that wasn't in Sterling's contacts, a number Vernon had written down, but I'd been too shocked by the briefcase to ask about. I texted Vernon, "That second number, send it." His reply came 30 seconds later. 10 digits, no name attached. I stared at the number, then at the villa where my son's shadow moved past an upstairs window. Decision point. Call it and risk alerting Sterling, or wait and let Tuesday night arrive without knowing what it meant. I dialed. The phone rang twice. Sterling's voice answered cold and professional. "Yeah." I said nothing, held my breath. "Everything's clear." Sterling continued, apparently assuming I was whoever normally called this number. "My old man is senile. He doesn't know anything." The word hit me like a fist. Senile. I sat in my car 200 meters from my son and listened to him discuss me like I was a problem to be managed. "He's just getting in the way of my wealth," Sterling said. "But not for much longer. Tuesday night. Everything's in place. The old fool won't suspect a thing." Voices murmured in the background. Sterling laughed. Not his real laugh, the one I'd heard since he was a child, but something harder, colder. "The cash is ready," he said. "The merchandise is confirmed. My father-in-law's connections made it easy. He thinks I'm building investment portfolios. Stupid old man trusts his son-in-law." I hung up. My hands shook. Not from fear. From rage that had nowhere to go except into the steering wheel I gripped until my knuckles went white. Senile. In 22 years as a federal inspector, I'd heard criminals call me many things. Pig, fed, bastard, threats against my family, promises of violence. But I'd never heard that word. And I'd certainly never heard it from my son's mouth, spoken with the casual contempt of a man describing an obstacle. Not for much longer. Tuesday night. Everything's in place. I sat in my car as darkness fell over the quiet suburb, Sterling's words playing on repeat in my mind. Today was Monday. I had less than 24 hours to understand what my son was planning, and 24 hours to decide whether I was still a father trying to save his son, or an inspector gathering evidence against a criminal. The answer would determine whether my grandchildren lived or died. At 9:30 that night, with Isla and Remy finally asleep upstairs, Cressida and I sat across from each other at my kitchen table like two strangers, about to confess to crimes we didn't know we'd committed. She'd put the children to bed early, claiming they needed rest before school tomorrow. Neither of us mentioned that tomorrow might never come the way we'd planned. The house settled around us with the familiar creaks of old wood and cooling pipes. Through the window, suburban darkness pressed against the glass. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The briefcase Vernon found beneath Sterling's spare tire. The cash is bundled and ready. The photographs of Isla and Remy with red circles drawn around their faces like targeting markers. The GPS history shows 3 weeks of systematic lies. The phone call where I'd heard my son discuss me like I was an obstacle to be removed. He called me senile. I said the word still bitter in my mouth. Said I was getting in the way of his wealth. Cressida's hands lay flat on the table. Fingers spread like she was trying to hold something down. Last week he had me sign papers. Insurance renewals, he said. Beneficiary updates for the kids' college funds. I didn't read them all the way through. Every nerve in my body went cold. I need to see those papers. Now. She disappeared into her home office and returned 3 minutes later with a manila folder. Insurance forms. Health coverage documents. Routine paperwork that any responsible parent would sign without thinking twice. She spread them across the table, and I examined each page with the trained eye I'd developed over 22 years of reading evidence that destroyed families. Life insurance beneficiary forms, legitimate. Health coverage updates for both children, standard language. College savings account modifications, nothing unusual. Then buried in the middle of the stack like a snake, hiding in the tall grass, I found it. A legal document in Spanish. Dense paragraphs of formal terminology that most people would skip, trusting the summary their spouse provided. But I'd worked international custody cases during my time with the Federal Task Force. I recognized the language. "This document is in Spanish," I said, keeping my voice level. "Did you know what you were signing?" "He said it was for the children's international health coverage," Cressida whispered, "in case we traveled to Europe someday. Sterling said his company was expanding operations overseas, and we needed documentation for emergency medical care abroad." I read the document 3 times to be certain. The legal terminology was clear: relinquishment of parental custody, transfer of sole guardianship rights, authority to relocate minors across international borders without secondary consent. "Cressida," I said carefully, "this is a custody relinquishment form. You legally gave him the right to take Isla and Remy. Permanently. Without your permission. Without anyone's permission." The color drained from her face. "What?" "It's valid under international law. Notarized. Witnessed. He can take them to any country, claim full legal custody, and you have no recourse. You signed away your parental rights." Her hand covered her mouth. For a long moment she didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the Spanish words that had stolen her children while she thought she was protecting them. I had spent 22 years reading legal documents that destroyed families' custody battles, trafficking evidence, forged identities. I never imagined I'd be reading one at my own kitchen table with my daughter-in-law's signature at the bottom. "He planned this," she said finally. "For months, maybe longer. Every conversation, every document, every late-night phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. He's been building an exit plan, and I was too stupid to see it." "You're not stupid," I said. "You trusted your husband. That's not a crime. It is when your husband is a criminal." She was right. Sterling had engineered this with the precision of a federal operation. The cash for bribes or payments, the photographs for false documents. The legal custody form gives him authority. The GPS deception establishes a pattern of business travel. The whole architecture of betrayal built one piece at a time while his family slept. "What do we do?" Cressida asked. I looked at her across the table. I am 32 years old, soft-spoken, devoted mother, now facing the reality that the man she'd married had spent months preparing to sell their children. "I need you to answer a question honestly," I said. "If we confront Sterling right now with this evidence, what happens?" She thought for less than 5 seconds. "He denies it. Perfectly. Convincingly. Says I'm hysterical, you're paranoid, the documents mean something else. Then the moment we turn our backs, he acts. We lose them forever." "That's what I think, too. So what's the alternative?" I stood up. 20 minutes. Pack only what you can carry. Essentials for the kids' medications, favorite comfort items. Clothes for 3 days. Nothing else. We're leaving before sunrise." Cressida didn't argue. Didn't ask where we were going or what came next. She just nodded and moved. How do you pack a life into 20 minutes? How do you choose what a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old will need? When you don't know where you're going or when you'll come back, I grabbed Remy's worn teddy bear, Isla's favorite drawing pad, and clothes from their overnight bags. Cressida moved through her bedroom like a soldier on patrol, efficient, focused, no wasted motion. At 1:45 a.m. I carried a sleeping Remy down the stairs while Cressida guided half-awake Isla by the hand. The little girl mumbled questions about where we were going. Cressida whispered that we were having an adventure, a surprise trip, and she'd understand in the morning. Remy didn't wake at all. His head rested against my shoulder, breath warm against my neck, teddy bear clutched tight, even in sleep. This small weight in my arms, this was what Sterling had marked for sale. I loaded them into my car, tucking blankets around their shoulders. Cressida sat in the back between them, one hand on each child. I took the driver's seat and started the engine. I turned off the lights in my home for what I thought might be the last time, watching 20 years of memories disappear into darkness. At 2:17 a.m. on Tuesday morning, we pulled out of my driveway and turned south on the empty street, 3 adults and 2 children, fleeing into the September night, with nothing but the clothes we'd grabbed and the truth we'd discovered too late. But Sterling had already thought of everything, including how to track us. 40 minutes south of Cincinnati on I-71, heading toward the Kentucky border with my grandchildren finally sleeping in the back seat and the dashboard clock reading 2:57 a.m. I watched headlights appear in my rearview mirror and felt my federal inspector instincts wake up screaming. The highway stretched empty in both directions, sparse truck traffic heading north toward Cincinnati. Otherwise just darkness, broken white lines disappearing under my hood, and the sound of Cressida breathing beside me in careful, measured rhythm like she was counting seconds. In the back, Isla slept curled against the door, her favorite blanket tucked around her shoulders. Remy clutched his worn teddy bear even in sleep, the stuffed animal pressed against his chest like a shield. Both children had barely stirred when we'd carried them from the house, too exhausted to question why Grandpa was taking them on a drive in the middle of the night. "Where exactly are we going?" Cressida whispered her first words since we'd crossed the county line. "Nashville," I said. "I have a friend there, Carl Bentley, former federal judge. If anyone can help us navigate the legal complications of that custody document, it's him. Will we be safe there?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to promise that Sterling couldn't reach us, couldn't find us, couldn't complete whatever plan he'd built for Tuesday night. But the headlights in my mirror had appeared exactly when my instinct said they would, far enough back to avoid obvious detection, close enough to maintain visual contact. "I don't know," I said honestly. The headlights maintained perfect distance, not closing, not falling back, just there steady and patient in the darkness 200 meters behind us. I tested it. Accelerated to 75 miles per hour. The headlights accelerated, dropped back to 65. The headlights slowed in perfect synchronization. Changed lanes. The headlights changed lanes 3 seconds later. Professional surveillance. The kind I'd conducted 100 times during federal operations. The kind that required training and discipline and someone giving orders through a radio. My mind raced through logistics. We left at 2:17 a.m. It was now 2:58. 41 minutes. Sterling couldn't have discovered we were gone, assembled a surveillance team, and deployed them to I-65 in 41 minutes. Not unless he'd been monitoring us in real time. Not unless he'd known we were leaving before we left. Then memory surfaced like ice water in my veins. "Cressida," I said quietly, "when did Sterling give Remy that teddy bear?" She glanced at me, confused by the sudden question. "Last month, for his birthday. He said it was special ordered, one of a kind. Why, 1 month ago. A month before I'd discovered the briefcase. A month before Vernon had opened Sterling's trunk and found cash and photographs. Sterling had been planning this operation for at least that long, maybe longer. And 1 month ago, he'd given his 5-year-old son a birthday present. 1 month ago, Sterling had handed Remy that teddy bear at his birthday party, ruffled his hair, and said, 'Take good care of him, buddy, he's special.' We'd all smiled. Catherine had taken photos. Cressida had served cake. We thought it was a sweet father-son moment. We were watching evidence being planted. 'I need you to examine that bear,' I said, 'right now, without waking Remy. Feel along the seams. Tell me if you find anything unusual.' Cressida stared at me for 3 seconds, then understood. She unbuckled her seatbelt and twisted in her seat, reaching back to where Remy slept. The little boy didn't wake when she carefully extracted the teddy bear from his arms and replaced it with the blanket we'd brought. In the dim dome light, Cressida ran her fingers along the bear's worn fabric. Head, arms, belly. Normal stuffing. Soft and yielding. Then her fingers stopped. 'There's something hard inside,' she whispered. 'In the belly. Different texture. It's not stuffing. Can you get it out?' She examined the seams, found a loose stitch at the bottom where the bear had been repaired. Before, or where someone had created access. Her fingers worked the thread, carefully opening a gap just wide enough to reach inside. What she pulled out was smaller than I'd expected. A coin-sized disc. Black plastic. A tiny green LED blinking once every 3 seconds on its surface. GPS tracker. Commercial grade. The kind you could buy online for $200 and activate with a phone app. Battery life of 30 days. Real-time location updates every 60 seconds. "Oh, God," Cressida breathed. "He put a tracker on our son's birthday present." The device sat in Cressida's palm, no bigger than a quarter, its green LED blinking once every 3 seconds, like a tiny mechanical heartbeat. Sterling had sewn betrayal into his 5-year-old son's favorite toy. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The headlights were still there, still maintaining distance. They weren't following my car. They were following the signal from the tracker in Cressida's hand. Following it south on I-65, while Sterling sat somewhere in Cincinnati watching a screen that showed a blinking dot moving toward Nashville. He'd known we would run, known we would take the children, known Remy wouldn't go anywhere without his bear, So he'd given his son a birthday present a month in advance, and waited for us to do exactly what he'd predicted. "What do we do?" Cressida asked, staring at the device like it might explode. The car behind us maintained its distance. Whoever was driving had orders. Follow the target. Don't engage until instructed. Report position. Standard surveillance protocol. But they didn't know we'd found the tracker. Sterling was watching a screen that said we were still headed south on I-65, still moving at 70 miles per hour, still completely unaware that we were being followed. That ignorance was the only advantage we had. "How long until we reach Nashville?" Cressida whispered. 3 hours, I said, "if we make it that long." I glanced at the tracker in Cressida's hand, then back at the headlights, maintaining perfect distance behind us. We had found Sterling's surveillance device, but that car was still following, still tracking, still closing the gap between our children and whatever Sterling had planned for Tuesday night. The tracker gave us one advantage. Sterling didn't know we'd found it. But I had maybe 5 minutes to decide what to do with that advantage, before the car behind us made the decision for me. The blue highway sign for a 24-hour rest area appeared like Providence at mile marker 97, and I took the exit, without signaling, watching the headlights behind us hesitate for just 2 seconds before following. The rest stop sat nearly empty at 3:15 in the morning. A handful of semi-trucks parked in the commercial vehicle section, vending machines glowing behind glass. The restroom building lit up like a beacon, and most importantly, a weary long-haul driver in his 50s beard, stubbled and baseball cap worn, preparing his northbound semi, with Illinois plates for the return journey. I pulled into a parking space 3 rows from the restrooms and killed the engine. "Keep the kids down," I told Cressida. "Look like you're sleeping. 5 minutes." She nodded understanding, without explanation. In the back seat, Isla and Remy slept on exhausted from being woken at 2 a.m. and carried to a car with minimal explanation. I took Remy's teddy bear, the one with Sterling's tracker sewn into its belly, and walked toward the restroom building. Slow, casual, just another tired traveler on a long drive. The surveillance car had pulled in 30 seconds after us, parking at the far edge of the lot with headlights off. Professional distance, professional patience. The truck driver climbed down from his cab and headed toward the restroom, thermos in hand. I timed my approach to intersect his path. "Long night," I said, nodding at his rig. "Always is," he replied, voice rough from hours on the road. "Headed back to Chicago. You—" "Nashville," I said. Family visit." He grunted acknowledgement and pushed through the restroom door. I gave him 30 seconds, then walked past his semi-truck. The cargo bed sat partially open, tarped load, but accessible from the side. I glanced once at the surveillance car. No movement, no reaction. They were watching my vehicle, not me. I slipped Remy's teddy bear into the truck's cargo bed, tucking it between 2 crates, where it wouldn't be immediately visible, but would continue broadcasting its signal, north on I-65 for the next 6 hours. In federal surveillance, we called it the cicada shell technique. Leave behind what they're tracking what they expect to find, while the actual target moves unseen. The cicada sheds its shell and flies away. The predator finds only empty armor. I walked back to my car, got in, and started the engine. "We're clear for maybe 4 hours, I told Cressida. "Get ready." 5 minutes later, the Illinois semi pulled out of the rest stop, heading north. I waited another 60 seconds, then pulled out, heading south. The surveillance car didn't move. They were waiting for their signal to relocate, and when it did, they'd follow the tracker north toward Cincinnati, while we continued south toward Nashville. Dawn broke over the Tennessee hills 2 hours later, like the world didn't know our family was falling apart. Orange light spread across farmland and forest. Early morning traffic began filling I-65 commuters, heading into Nashville, delivery trucks making their rounds. Normal Tuesday morning for everyone except us. "They're gone," Cressida said, checking the mirrors for the 20th time. "It worked. For now," I said. "We have maybe until mid-morning before they realize the tracker's moving in the wrong direction." Isla stirred in the back seat, blinking awake. "Grandpa, where are we?" "Almost to Nashville, sweetheart. We're visiting an old friend of mine." "Why did we leave so early?" Cressida turned in her seat and manufactured a smile. "Adventure, remember. Sometimes adventures start before sunrise." Isla accepted this with the easy trust of a 7-year-old who believed adults had everything under control, if only she knew. Nashville's outskirts appeared ahead, suburbs giving way to the city, traffic thickening. I had Carl Bentley's address memorized from Christmas cards exchanged over the years, but first we needed cash, safe house arrangements, supplies for the children, basic necessities you take for granted until you're fleeing your home at 2 a.m. with nothing but the clothes you grabbed in darkness. I need to stop for cash, I told Cressida. We'll need money for wherever we're staying. I pulled into a gas station at 6 a.m. as the sun climbed higher. The ATM sat next to the convenience store entrance, a blue screen glowing in the morning light. I inserted my card. Primary savings account, the account I'd maintained for 40 years. Federal Service paychecks deposited every 2 weeks. Careful investments, retirement planning, everything I'd built for emergencies exactly like this. Available balance, John Rowe. I stared at the screen. Error. Had to be an error. Network glitch. System maintenance. I tried again. 0.0. I switched to my secondary account, the backup I'd established when I retired. 4 years of careful budgeting and saving. 0.0. My hands went cold. I selected transaction history. 22 years of federal service at a modest salary. 15 years of careful investment. 4 years of retirement budgeting. The number represented every sacrifice, every overtime shift, every moment I'd chosen, duty over comfort. The money I'd saved to help Cressida if she ever needed it. The money I'd planned to leave for Isla and Remy's college educations. And my son had stolen it in 3 days. I stood at that ATM with the morning sun breaking over Nashville and the transaction history glowing on the screen like an accusation. Sterling hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen 40 years of my life, every plan I'd made for Cressida, and the children every safety net I'd built. I checked my wallet. $7 in cash. A credit card that probably had the same 0.0 balance. A driver's license. A phone with Carl Bentley's number. I walked back to the car where my daughter-in-law and grandchildren waited. Cressida looked at me through the window, saw my face, and her expression changed from hope to dread. How much? She asked when I got in. $7, I said. Everything else is gone. It would have to be enough. I dialed Carl Bentley's number from the gas station parking lot at 6:15. Tuesday morning, my hands steadier than they should have been after everything we'd just survived. He answered on the second ring. Bentley. Carl, it's Lawrence Whitaker. I need help. I have my daughter-in-law and 2 grandchildren. We're running from my son. Silence for exactly 3 seconds. Then, how far are you from Nashville? Gas station on the south side. Maybe 15 minutes from downtown. Text me your location. I'm sending my address. Come directly. Don't stop anywhere else. No questions about why. No demands for explanation. No hesitation. Carl Bentley, a retired federal judge at 62, had worked alongside me on federal cases 20 years ago. That kind of partnership built trust that didn't require proof before offering help. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of a white-fenced suburban home with flower beds that looked like someone actually cared about them. Morning sun reflected off windows that promised normalcy, the kind of life we'd fled from when we left Cincinnati in darkness. Carl opened the front door before I could knock. Tall, gray-haired, wearing reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and a flannel shirt that said he'd been awake for hours. He took one look at Cressida's pale face at Isla, and Remy, blinking sleepily in the back seat at me with exhaustion carved into every line of my face. Coffee's on, he said. I'll bring them inside. The house smelled like fresh brewed coffee and toast. Warm, safe. Normal sounds of a Tuesday morning for people whose families weren't falling apart. Carl's wife, Margaret, appeared from the kitchen, a former elementary school teacher, who radiated the calm authority of someone who'd managed hundreds of children. She took one look at Isla and Remy, and her expression shifted into caretaker mode. These 2 need rest, she said gently. The guest room is ready. Isla barely registered the new surroundings. Remy clutched at Cressida's hand, still half asleep. Margaret led them down a hallway, while Carl guided Cressida and me toward the kitchen. Sit, he said, pouring coffee into mugs without asking if we wanted it. Eat something. Then you'll tell me everything. Margaret returned 3 minutes later. They're asleep. Both of them were exhausted. They'll be safe there as long as you need. She sat down beside Carl at the kitchen table, and I understood this wasn't going to be a private conversation. They'd been married for 30 years. Whatever I told him she would hear. Whatever decisions got made, they'd make together. Start from the beginning, Carl said. So I did. Federal investigator mode. Facts first, emotions later. Vernon's garage on Monday morning. The briefcase hidden beneath Sterling's spare tire. $200,000 in cash bundled like a drug deal. Photographs of Isla and Remy with red circles marking their faces the way I'd marked trafficking victims in case files. The GPS logs reveal 3 weeks of systematic lies, business trips that never happened, the same address visited repeatedly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., while Sterling claimed to be in Chicago, Boston, Denver. The phone call where I'd heard my son discuss me like I was senile and in the way, his voice was cold and calculating. Not for much longer. Tuesday night, everything's in place. Cressida took over describing dinner where Isla had innocently revealed Sterling's Europe plan. How he'd told the children they wouldn't need mommy or grandpa anymore. Just the 3 of them in a new house. I explained the Spanish custody document. How Cressida had signed away her parental rights without knowing it. How Sterling had built legal authority to take the children internationally, and we'd have no recourse. The tracker in Remy's teddy bear, the birthday present given a month ago, evidence planted long before we discovered any of this. The stolen life savings. My entire federal pension and retirement accounts emptied over 72 hours. 40 years of work erased. 20 years ago, Carl and I had worked federal cases together, him on the bench, me in the field. We'd sent organized crime figures to prison with evidence I'd gathered and rulings he'd made. That kind of work builds trust that doesn't fade. When I called, he didn't ask if I was certain. He asked how far away I was. Now he listened to 45 minutes of briefing without interrupting once. Judge's training. Let the witness tell the complete story before asking questions. Watch for inconsistencies. Process the narrative as a whole. When I finished, Carl sat back in his chair and looked at me for 30 seconds. The custody document is the biggest problem, he said finally. Even if we prove Sterling's criminal intent, Cressida's signature gives him legal authority. International courts would recognize it. I know, I said. The financial theft we can pursue, but that takes time. Months. Meanwhile, Sterling has the resources to disappear. I know, I said again. How do you summarize your son's betrayal in 45 minutes? How do you explain that the person you raised, taught to ride a bike, sent to college, is now planning to sell his own children to strangers across an ocean? Carl looked at Margaret. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. She nodded. I know someone, Carl said, attorney who specializes in organized crime and custody cases. She's worked with the FBI on trafficking operations. If anyone can build an emergency intervention case, it's her. Can she stop him before tonight? Cressida asked. Sterling said Tuesday night. That's today. We have hours. Let me call her now, Carl said. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts with practiced efficiency. Found the name he wanted. Checked his watch, 7:35 a.m., and made the call anyway. Simone, it's Carl Bentley. I have an emergency custody case with federal trafficking implications. I need you at my house in 1 hour. He paused, listening. Yes, I'm aware of the hour. This can't wait. And Simone, bring your FBI contact list. He hung up and looked at me. She's on her way, he said. Meanwhile, you're going to write down every detail you can remember. Times, locations, amounts, names. Everything. Because when Simone gets here, she's going to ask questions that feel invasive, and you're going to answer every single one. Understood. Understood, I said. Margaret set a legal pad and pen in front of me. Carl refilled my coffee. And for the first time since Monday morning, when Vernon had pulled me to the back of his garage, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. At noon on Tuesday, Simone Redmond spread the Spanish custody document across her glass desk in downtown Nashville and said the 4 words I'd been dreading since we fled Cincinnati. This is legally valid. We'd moved from Carl's house to Simone's professional office an hour earlier, a corner suite on the 14th floor with a wall of law degrees and case files stacked in precise order. Simone Redmond, a sharp-eyed 38-year-old attorney with a reputation for dismantling organized crime operations, had spent the morning examining every document we'd brought. The forged signature on my financial accounts, the GPS logs from Sterling's car, the photos of Isla and Remy marked like merchandise. But it was the Spanish custody form that held her attention now. This document is filed with the Spanish consulate, she said, running her finger down the translation on her computer screen. It grants your husband sole legal custody for international relocation. Under the Hague Convention, this is enforceable in any signatory country. Cressida sat beside me, hands folded in her lap. But I didn't know what I was signing. He said it was insurance. Under international law, that doesn't matter, Simone said, not unkindly. Your signature is witnessed and notarized. A consular official validated it. Unless we can prove Sterling forged your signature, which we can't, because you actually signed it, this document gives him legal authority to remove Isla and Remy from the United States permanently. No court notification required. No second signature needed. Just this. She tapped the paper with one manicured fingernail. The sound echoed in the quiet office. So we have no legal recourse? I asked. I didn't say that, Simone replied. I said the document is valid. That's different from saying Sterling can execute it without consequences. But we need to understand what we're fighting before we can fight it. Cressida's composure finally shattered. The tears had been building since we'd fled Cincinnati 12 hours ago. Quiet tears in the car, controlled tears when she'd put Isla and Remy to bed at Carl's house, professional tears during the morning briefing, but now sitting in a lawyer's office staring at legal proof that she'd signed away her children, something broke. Deep sobs. The kind that comes from a mother realizing she'd enabled her children's kidnapping through her own trusting ignorance. I signed away my babies, she gasped between breaths. I gave him permission to take them forever. I put my hand on her shoulder. You didn't know. He manipulated you. This is Sterling's crime, not yours. Simone produced tissues and a bottle of water with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen clients break down before. She set them on the desk and waited, giving Cressida space to grieve. Mrs. Whitaker, she said after a minute, we're going to fight this, but I need you to focus now. There's more we need to understand about Sterling's operation. Cressida wiped her eyes, drank water, and nodded. I had spent 22 years enforcing the law, believing that legal documents protected the innocent. But sitting in that office, watching my daughter-in-law, realized a single signature had condemned her children. I understood how easily law becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. Simone turned to her computer and pulled up financial databases I recognized from federal investigations. The briefcase Vernon found contained $200,000 in cash. You said it was bundled like organized money. Yes, I said. Bank bans, sequential bills, professional counting. I traced the deposit records, Simone said, typing rapidly. Used the account number you photographed before leaving Cincinnati. The money was transferred from an offshore account registered in the Cayman Islands. Standard trafficking operations structure, foreign deposit, to avoid U.S. banking oversight. She clicked through several screens. But here's what's interesting. The account receiving the $200,000 is registered solely in Sterling Whitaker's name. Social security number, date of birth, sole beneficiary. That's expected, I said. It's his account. Is it? Simone looked at me. According to the GPS logs and phone records Carl showed me, Sterling has been working with an accomplice. A woman named Soleil Sinclair, the mistress you mentioned, the one at the Millbrook Lane address. Yes, Cressida said quietly. I found text messages between them months ago. I thought it was just an affair. Soleil Sinclair's name appears nowhere in this account registration, Simone said. No joint holder, no beneficiary, no power of attorney. Sterling is hiding this money from his own accomplice. The implications hit me immediately. He's stealing from his partner. He's betraying everyone, Simone corrected. That's both terrifying and useful. Criminal organizations don't tolerate partners who steal from each other. Trafficking networks operate on strict trust hierarchies. If Sterling is taking payment for merchandise and hiding it from his collaborator, he's violating the most basic rule of organized crime. She pulled up another file. I've worked cases like this before. When trafficking partners discover one of them is skimming money, they don't go to the police. They handle it internally, violently. Sterling had built an architecture of betrayal so complex it was almost impressive if it wasn't destroying everyone who'd ever trusted him. Father, wife, children, mistress, criminal partners. He'd lied to all of us with the same convincing smile. So Sterling is at risk from his own network, I asked. If they find out, Simone said. And that's where this gets interesting. The FBI has been tracking a trafficking organization with connections to this region for 18 months. They've been watching, gathering evidence, waiting for internal fractures. Sterling's double cross of his mistress is exactly the kind of crack they exploit. She closed the financial report and looked at us with calculating intensity. However, Sterling's betrayal of Soleil Sinclair is our leverage, she said. If she discovers he's hiding money from her, if the trafficking network learns he's cheating them, they'll turn on him faster than we can. The question is whether we can use that fracture to protect Isla and Remy before Sterling executes his plan tonight. Simone picked up her phone. I know someone, she said, FBI agent who's been working the Petrov trafficking investigation. If anyone can move fast enough to stop Sterling, it's him. Simone's finger hovered over a contact labeled simply Ortega, FBI, for exactly 2 seconds before she pressed the call and put the phone on speaker so we could all hear what came next. The line rang twice. Ortega. The voice was male-controlled, professional. FBI Special Agent Desmond Ortega, 40 years old and cold-eyed from years of trafficking cases, had been tracking Petrov's network for 8 months, though I didn't know any of that yet. Desmond, it's Simone Redmond, she said. I have an emergency trafficking case. Domestic custody fraud with international implications. The intermediary's name is Soleil Sinclair. Silence on the other end. Not the pause of someone thinking. The silence of someone whose entire focus had just locked onto a single point. Spell that, Desmond said. His tone shifted from professional courtesy to sharp command. Soleil, Sinclair. Yes, Simone said. Simone, we've had Sinclair under surveillance since January. She's connected to Victor Petrov's network. How did you get her name? Cressida's hand found mine under the table. Her fingers were ice cold. I'm sitting with 2 witnesses, Simone said. Former federal inspector Lawrence Whitaker and his daughter-in-law, Cressida Whitaker. Lawrence's son is working with Sinclair to traffic Lawrence's grandchildren out of the country. They fled Cincinnati this morning with 2 children, ages 7 and 5. The handoff was supposed to happen tonight. Another pause. I heard typing in the background. Petrov runs a network across 6 countries, Desmond said. Soleil recruits domestic partners who have access to children, usually family members, in financial distress or custody disputes. She provides the documentation, the buyers, the transportation. The network specializes in wealthy buyers who want children who won't be reported missing because the legal parent authorized their removal. The room felt smaller, colder. What's your connection to Sinclair? Desmond asked. How did you identify her? Simone looked at me. I leaned toward the phone. My son Sterling Whitaker has been meeting someone at a secluded villa in Cincinnati, I said. The GPS in his car shows repeated visits over 3 weeks. We don't have visual confirmation that it's Soleil Sinclair, but the behavioral pattern matches what you're describing. Sterling hasn't met her at a known Petrov location, Desmond asked. We have an address, Simone said. Millbrook Lane, upscale suburb. More typing. That's a new address. Not in our surveillance log. Sinclair must have established it recently. What else do you have? I took a breath. $200,000 in cash hidden in my son's car. Photographs of my grandchildren with red circles marked around their faces. A Spanish-language custody relinquishment document that gives Sterling legal authority to remove the children internationally, and financial records showing he stole my entire life savings, over $800,000 in the past 72 hours. Sitting in that office, listening to an FBI agent describe an international trafficking network, I understood with cold clarity that Sterling hadn't betrayed us on impulse. He'd been recruited, trained, positioned. My son was a soldier in someone else's war against innocence. Mr. Whitaker, Desmond said carefully, you said $200,000 in cash. Where is that money now? Hidden in Sterling's vehicle as of Monday morning, I said. I haven't had access to verify if it's still there. And the account that money was deposited from, do you have records? Simone slid a folder across her desk and opened it to the financial trace she'd run earlier. Offshore Cayman Islands account, transferred to a domestic account registered solely in Sterling Whitaker's name. Social Security number, sole beneficiary. No joint holders. No Soleil Sinclair listed. Desmond's voice had gone very quiet. No, Simone said. Sterling is hiding the money from his partner. 5 seconds of silence. Then Desmond spoke with barely contained intensity. He's stealing from Petrov's network. That's a death sentence if they find out. Soleil doesn't know. We have no indication she's aware, Simone said. Mr. Whitaker, Desmond said, you just gave us the final piece we needed. We've been tracking Soleil Sinclair for months, but we couldn't connect her to specific domestic conspirators. Sterling's your son, which means you can testify to the custody fraud, the financial manipulation, the marked photographs. The account in his name only gives us leverage over Sinclair. When she discovers he's cheating her, she'll flip to save herself. And the timing of tonight's planned handoff means we can move before anyone disappears. How does it feel to discover your personal nightmare is someone else's case file, that your grandchildren's faces marked in red are evidence in a federal investigation that spans continents and has been running for months before you ever knew to be afraid? What do you need from us? I asked. Everything you have. Photos, documents, GPS logs, account records. I'm booking a flight to Nashville right now. I'll be there by 8 p.m. We'll debrief coordinate with the local FBI and establish a protection detail for your family. Meanwhile, you stay exactly where you are. Don't contact Sterling. Don't go back to Cincinnati. Don't do anything that alerts him you're working with federal authorities. Understood, I said. Simone, I'm sending you a secure file upload link, Desmond continued. Get everything scanned and uploaded within the hour. I want our team reviewing evidence before my plane lands. Done, Simone said. Mr. Whitaker. Mrs. Whitaker, you need to understand something, Desmond said. When we move on Petrov's network, everyone involved becomes exponentially more dangerous. Sterling will realize something's wrong. Soleil will know her operation is compromised. People protecting themselves from federal prosecution don't leave witnesses. So until I get there and we have a tactical plan, you stay hidden. Understood. Yes, I said. Desmond ended the call with final instructions. Stay at Carl's house. Wait for contact trust. No one else. Simone set down the phone and looked at me and Cressida with careful honesty. The FBI can protect you, she said. But Sterling is about to discover his family disappeared and his tracker went north, while you went south. And when Soleil discovers he's been stealing from Petrov's network, desperate criminals protecting themselves, don't leave witnesses. At 7:15 Tuesday evening, while Cressida and I were eating dinner at Carl's kitchen table with our grandchildren safely upstairs, my phone rang with an FBI number, and Desmond Ortega's voice said the words that turned my rescue into a manhunt. Lawrence, Cincinnati PD just issued a warrant for your arrest. I set down my fork. Carl looked up from his plate. Cressida's hand froze halfway to her water glass. What I said. Sterling filed a missing persons report at Cincinnati Police Headquarters 3 hours ago, Desmond said, his voice tight with controlled anger. The report claims you, Lawrence Whitaker, age 60, diagnosed with stage 2 Alzheimer's disease, have kidnapped your daughter-in-law, Cressida, and your grandchildren, Isla and Remy, without their consent. He presented himself as the desperate son trying to save his family from a confused, potentially dangerous, elderly father. The room went silent except for the hum of Carl's refrigerator and distant sounds of Isla and Remy playing upstairs. That's a complete fabrication, I said. I don't have dementia. I know, Desmond said. But Cincinnati PD has medical documentation that says otherwise. Professional records, multiple physicians, 18-month diagnosis history. Local police took one look at Sterling's evidence and issued an immediate search warrant. They're treating this as an endangered persons case, elderly man with cognitive impairment, armed with federal law enforcement training, holding 3 people against their will. Cressida made a sound like she'd been punched. He told the police I kidnapped them, I asked. He made me a criminal. Complete role inversion, Desmond said, and it's professionally executed. Let me read what he submitted. I heard papers rustling through the phone. Medical records from Dr. Harold Fitzgerald, neurologist, dated March 2023. Initial consultation for memory loss and disorientation. Diagnosis early-stage Alzheimer's disease with recommendation for cognitive testing and medication management. I'd never heard of Harold Fitzgerald. Never been to a neurologist in my life. Desmond continued. Follow-up from primary care physician Dr. Margaret Bentley. No relation to you. Carl, dated August 2023. Documentation of progressive decline. Patient exhibiting confusion, memory gaps, and occasional aggressive behavior when confronted about his condition. Carl's jaw tightened. Professional document forgery. This wasn't improvised. Third document, Desmond said. Psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Von Trent, dated January 2024. Patients refusing to acknowledge diagnosis, becoming paranoid about family members expressing delusional beliefs about conspiracies. Recommendation for monitored care and possible intervention if a patient becomes a danger to himself or others. 3 days ago, Sterling called me senile on a phone call he thought was private. Now that word was in an official police report backed by forged medical records, turning his contempt into my legal identity. I was wanted for kidnapping my own grandchildren while trying to save them. Documents show diagnosis from 3 separate doctors over 18 months, Desmond said. Neurologist, primary care, psychiatric evaluation, official letterheads, doctor signatures, detailed patient history. If I didn't know better, I'd believe them myself. All forged, I said. I've never seen those doctors in my life. I know, Desmond said. We'll prove it. But Sterling prepared this escape route months ago. The same forger who created the Spanish custody documents probably created these. He built a contingency plan in case you discovered his operation, make you the dangerous one, make himself the hero. Cressida's face had gone white. He weaponized the legal system against us. That's exactly what he did, Desmond confirmed. And it's working. Cincinnati PD has patrol units looking for your vehicle. They've contacted the Ohio State Patrol. By morning, your face will be on local news as a missing endangered senior with cognitive impairment. Every police officer in the state will be watching for you. Carl leaned forward. Federal jurisdiction supersedes local warrants. You can override this. We can, Desmond said, but it complicates the timeline. I need to coordinate with the Cincinnati FBI field office, get federal trafficking charges filed, and establish jurisdiction. The local warrant gives Sterling cover. If we move too slowly, he can claim we're protecting a kidnapper. If we move too fast, local police might interfere with federal operations. So what do we do? I asked. I'm accelerating everything, Desmond said. I was supposed to land in Nashville tomorrow morning. I'm boarding a plane in 40 minutes instead. I'll be at Carl's house by 10 p.m. tonight. We speed everything up, get your statements recorded, get Cressida's testimony, documented file emergency federal charges, and establish protective custody before Sterling can weaponize anything else. 22 years in federal law enforcement taught me to respect the system, trust evidence, and follow procedure. Now that same system was hunting me because my son had corrupted it with lies. Every instinct I had about justice was being used against me. The warrant complicates things, Desmond continued, but it also proves Sterling is panicking. He wouldn't burn this contingency plan unless he knew you were gone, and his operation was compromised. He's escalating, which means he's scared. Scared criminals make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Carl asked. The kind that leaves evidence, Desmond said. The forged medical records can be traced. The doctors whose names he used will have no record of treating Lawrence. The signatures won't match their actual signatures. Sterling just created a paper trail that connects him to professional document forgery. When we prove it's fake, and we will, he won't just face trafficking charges. He'll face federal document fraud, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice. After Desmond hung up to board his flight, silence filled Carl's kitchen. Upstairs, Isla laughed at something Remy said. Normal sounds of children who didn't know their grandfather was wanted by police. Carl looked at me with the sober assessment of a former federal judge. Sterling just made a critical mistake, he said. By filing that report, he created an official timeline. When the FBI proves those medical records are forged, when they trace them back to the same forger who created the custody documents, Sterling won't just face trafficking charges. He'll face federal document fraud, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice. He's building his own prison, one lie at a time. But first, Cressida said quietly, we have to survive the next 72 hours while every police officer in Ohio is looking for a dangerous elderly man who doesn't exist. At 2 o'clock Wednesday morning, Carl Bentley and I sat in his living room under the warm glow of a reading lamp, two old men who'd spent careers enforcing the law, now planning how to use it against my son before he could destroy what remained of my family. Desmond had arrived at 10 p.m. Tuesday as promised, spent 3 hours debriefing us with the precision of someone building a federal case, then left at 1 a.m. to coordinate with the Nashville FBI field office. Now Carl and I waited in the quiet house while Cressida slept fitfully upstairs, and my grandchildren dreamed innocent dreams in the guest bedroom. Carl picked up his phone. Who are you calling at 2 in the morning? I asked. Someone who'll answer, he said, scrolling through contacts. He pressed the dial and put the phone on speaker. It rang 3 times. Fitzgerald. The voice was rough with sleep, but alert. Federal Judge Harold Fitzgerald, a 65-year-old jurist who had worked alongside Carl on organized crime cases for 15 years, answered his phone at 2 a.m. because he trusted Carl's judgment without question. Harold, it's Carl Bentley. I need an emergency wiretap warrant. Federal trafficking case with custody fraud. Silence for 2 seconds. Then Harold's voice came back sharp and focused. At 2 a.m., Carl must be serious. Talk to me. The suspect filed false police reports to cover a trafficking conspiracy, Carl said. He's my friend's son. The children are 7 and 5. The handoff was supposed to happen yesterday, but the family escaped. We have maybe 48 hours before he relocates the operation. Federal Nexus, Harold asked. The international trafficking network connected to Victor Petrov. The FBI has been tracking the intermediary for 8 months. The suspect forged Spanish custody documents, filed false medical records across state lines, and embezzled over $800,000 from his father's federal pension accounts. I heard typing through the phone. Harold was already working. Who's the requesting agent? Harold asked. FBI Special Agent Desmond Ortega, out of the Nashville field office. He's coordinating with Cincinnati. Put your friend on the line, Harold said. I want to hear from the father. Carl gestured to me. I leaned toward the phone. Judge Fitzgerald, this is Lawrence Whitaker. Sterling is my son. I was a federal inspector for 22 years before retirement. Everything Carl said is accurate. Mr. Whitaker, give me the short version. What makes this federal, and what makes it urgent? I testified in federal court dozens of times. I knew how to be concise. My son was recruited into an international trafficking network. Forged Spanish custody relinquishment, making his wife's signature legally transfer children to his sole authority. Marked photographs of my grandchildren matching trafficking documentation protocols. $200,000 in cash from offshore Cayman accounts. He stole my federal pension and retirement savings to fund the operation. When we fled with the children yesterday, he filed false police reports, claiming I have Alzheimer's and kidnapped my own family. The forged medical records use doctor names and medical facilities across 3 states. That's interstate document fraud with federal jurisdiction. The children are with you now? Harold asked. Sleeping upstairs, safe. But my son is connected to an organization that doesn't leave loose ends. Harold was quiet for 10 seconds. I heard more typing. The forged medical records create federal jurisdiction document fraud across state lines, he said. That's my hook. Combined with the trafficking conspiracy and the interstate theft, I have probable cause for emergency surveillance. But I need details, everything. Start from the beginning. For 45 minutes, Carl and I walked Harold Fitzgerald through every piece of evidence. Vernon's garage discovery. The GPS logs reveal systematic deception. The Spanish custody papers Cressida signed unknowingly. The tracker hidden in Remy's birthday teddy bear. The stolen savings transferred in 72 hours. The FBI confirmed that Soleil Sinclair was a known Petroff intermediary. The forged dementia diagnosis was designed to make me look like a dangerous, confused criminal. 20 years of working federal cases together meant Carl could call a sitting judge at 2 in the morning and be trusted implicitly. That kind of professional reputation isn't built through politics or networking. It's earned by never lying, never exaggerating, never crying. Wolf. When Carl Bentley said children were in danger, judges listened. Harold asked pointed questions about probable cause, about the federal nexus, connecting local crimes to interstate conspiracy, about the imminent threat to child welfare that justified emergency action without the usual warrant review process. At 3:15 a.m., he made his decision. The line went dead. Carl and I sat in the lamplight, too exhausted to feel relief, but too wired to sleep. At 4 a.m., Desmond called. Monitoring is live, he said without preamble. Both targets' communications are being recorded in real time. Every call Sterling makes from this moment forward, every text message, every email, we have it all. The local warrant, Carl asked, superseded by federal authority. Lawrence is officially a protected witness, not a fugitive. Cincinnati PD has been notified that their missing persons case is now part of a federal investigation. The dementia report is flagged as potential evidence in document fraud charges. The wiretap flipped the chessboard. For 3 days, Sterling had been hunting us through GPS trackers and police warrants, controlling the game with lies and forged documents. Now, every move he made would be recorded, every call intercepted, every text preserved. The hunter had become the evidence. Now we wait for Sterling to talk, Desmond said. We didn't have to wait long. As pale dawn light began filtering through Carl's curtains at 4:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Desmond. First intercept. Sterling has just called Soleil. Recording attached. You need to hear this. I downloaded the audio file. Carl moved closer so we could both listen. I pressed play. For the first time since this nightmare began, I heard my son's voice when he didn't know anyone was listening. I sat in the FBI's temporary command center at 8 o'clock Wednesday morning. Headphones in hand, about to hear my son's voice the way federal agents heard criminals. Unguarded, unaware, and completely damning. Desmond had established the operation in a secured room inside Nashville's federal building. Audio equipment lined one wall. Recording systems with digital timers showing timestamps and call durations. A conference table where Carl and I now sat while Desmond prepared the playback. This call was made from Sterling's cell phone to Soleil Sinclair at 4:17 this morning, Desmond said, pulling up the audio file on his computer. Duration 3 minutes, 12 seconds. He looked at me with the careful honesty of someone who'd delivered bad news to families before. You need to hear this, Lawrence, but I'm warning you it's going to be hard to listen to. Play it, I said. Desmond pressed a button. The speakers crackled with connection static, then Sterling's voice filled the room. Not the voice I knew from 34 years of fatherhood. Not the careful tone he used when speaking to family. This was something else entirely. They're gone, Sterling said, his words clipped and professional. Disappeared sometime yesterday. Police are searching, but they have a head start. Soleil Sinclair's voice came through clear and sharp. How is that possible? You had tracking. The old man is smarter than I gave him credit for, Sterling said. He found the tracker. The signals showed them heading north on I-65 yesterday, but it stopped moving around dawn. Probably discovered it and ditched it. This is a problem, Sterling. Soleil's tone carried no emotion. Pure business calculation. Victor doesn't like complications. I have the police looking for him, Sterling said. Official dementia diagnosis. He's wanted for kidnapping his own family. When they find him, I'll have legal authority to take custody immediately. The custody documents give me that power. Carl's hand tightened on the edge of the table beside me. For 34 years, I'd known my son's voice in every mood. Childhood laughter, teenage rebellion, adult confidence. But the voice on that recording was a stranger's. Professional, detached. The voice of someone who'd learned to compartmentalize humanity into transactions. What about the delivery timeline? Soleil asked. Can you still meet the deadline? I'm handling it, Sterling said. The dementia report makes my father look dangerous and confused. When police locate him, they'll bring him in for evaluation. I'll be there as the concerned son. I'll take the merchandise into protective custody and proceed as planned. Merchandise. The words sliced through me, but the recording continued. Victor Petrov doesn't accept handling it, Soleil said, her voice hardening. He accepts delivery on schedule. Friday night, Sterling. That's 48 hours from now. Can you deliver the merchandise or not? Before I tell you what Sterling said next, are you still with me? Comment A if you think I should have stopped listening right there, or B if you'd need to hear it all. Add one short reason. A quick note. What follows contains recreated dialogue for narrative impact. The core truth is what matters. Sterling didn't hesitate. The goods are missing, but I'll locate them. I have resources. The transaction will proceed as scheduled. Resources, Soleil repeated flatly. Your father is a retired federal inspector who just outsmarted your surveillance and disappeared with 3 witnesses who can testify against both of us. Those aren't missing goods, Sterling. That's a federal case waiting to happen. Which is why I filed the dementia report, Sterling said with the patience of someone explaining to a slow student. If my father tries to go to authorities, I have medical documentation showing he's mentally incompetent. His testimony becomes worthless. The daughter-in-law signed custody relinquishment. She has no legal standing. And the children are 7 and 5, too young to be credible witnesses. I heard him calculating, heard him turning every relationship into leverage, every person into a problem to solve. Friday night, Soleil said again. Victor Petrov doesn't allow delays or excuses. The buyers are expecting delivery on schedule. If you can't produce the merchandise, he'll find someone who can. I understand the terms, Sterling said coldly. Friday night, September 20th, I'll have them at the delivery point by 10 p.m. You'd better, Soleil said, because if you don't, Victor won't just terminate the contract. He'll terminate the liability. And Sterling, you're part of that liability now. The call ended with a click. I pulled the headphones off. My hands were shaking. The word merchandise hung in the air like poison. Isla with her bright eyes and endless questions. Remy with his teddy bear and superhero dreams. Merchandise. Goods to be delivered. I pulled the headphones off because if I listened to one more second, I would break something. He called them merchandise. I said, my voice not quite steady. My grandchildren are merchandise to him. Yes, Desmond said quietly. That's how trafficking networks operate. Dehumanize the victims. Makes it easier to complete the transaction. Carl sat back in his chair, face pale. Friday night, September 20th. That's the delivery deadline. 48 hours from when that call was made, Desmond confirmed. He pulled up a digital display on the wall screen, a countdown timer. which gives us exactly 72 hours from now to build a complete case, locate the delivery point, coordinate arrests, and save your grandchildren. He clicked a button. The timer appeared 72 hours. Then it began counting down. 71:59:59, 71:59:58. I watched 60 seconds disappear while we sat in that room planning how to trap my son. 60 seconds closer to Friday night. 60 seconds less time to save Isla and Remy from becoming two more children who vanished into Viktor Petrov's network and never came home. First step, Desmond said, turning to face me. We need to confirm the delivery location. You said Vernon gave you an address where Sterling's GPS showed repeated visits. Millbrook Lane, I said. Secluded villa on Cincinnati's outskirts. He went there every Tuesday and Thursday night for 3 weeks. That's where he was meeting Soleil, Desmond said. That's where they planned this operation, and that's probably where they'll attempt the Friday night handoff. The timer kept counting. 71:58:12, 71:58:11. We're going to that address, Desmond said. Right now. At 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, I watched Vernon Reyes pick the lock on my son's office door through a grainy video call from 600 miles away, and I understood with perfect clarity that I was now coordinating a break-in the way I'd once coordinated arrests. Desmond had decided we needed more evidence before approaching the Millbrook Lane villa. Sterling's office might contain documentation, communications, proof of the trafficking conspiracy. Vernon had volunteered immediately when I called him that morning. Now I sat in the FBI command center, watching Vernon's phone camera show the empty hallway of Sterling's office building in Cincinnati. Lunch hour. Most employees were gone. Vernon's locksmith tools made quick work of the door. I'm in, Vernon said quietly through the phone. Where's the safe? Behind the bookshelf, I said, remembering Sterling's office from my last visit 6 months ago. Left wall, pull the middle shelf forward. Vernon's camera shifted, showing books and files. Then the bookshelf swung away from the wall, revealing a small safe built into the concrete. Got it, Vernon said. Combination. I'd worked burglary cases for years. People used predictable numbers, birthdays, anniversaries, addresses. Try June 7th, I said. His wedding date. Vernon's weathered fingers spun the dial. 607. The safe clicked open. Wedding date, Vernon muttered. Some kind of sick joke. Inside stacks of cash bound with rubber bands, legal documents in folders, and 2 airline tickets lying on top of everything else. 2 tickets to Madrid, Vernon said, holding them up to the camera. Friday night, departure at 8 p.m. Sterling Whitaker and someone named Daniela Moretti. The name meant nothing to me. Daniela Moretti, I repeated. Not Cressida. Not Soleil Sinclair. A third woman. He's planning to abandon everyone, Vernon said. Wife, mistress, father, children. Just disappear with someone we've never heard of. The safe combination was Sterling and Cressida's wedding date. The date he'd promised to love and protect her forever. Now that number unlocked evidence of his plan to abandon her, steal her children, and flee the country with a woman whose name I'd never heard. Take photos of everything, I told Vernon. Every document, every ticket. Don't remove anything. Vernon worked methodically, photographing the cash, the tickets, the legal papers. When he finished, he closed the safe, reset the combination, and replaced the bookshelf. 5 minutes later, he was out of the building. Back in Nashville, Simone was conducting her own investigation. She'd spread Sterling's forged medical records across her desk, the fake Alzheimer's diagnosis that Cincinnati police had accepted as legitimate evidence. These documents are professional work, she said, examining them under magnification. But every forger leaves markers. Paper stock, signature, patterns, formatting, quirks. It's like a fingerprint. She pulled up comparative samples on her computer screen, documents from other cases, known forgeries seized in federal investigations. There, she said, pointing at the screen, this signature style, the way the letterhead is formatted, the specific paper weight, these match known work from Von Trent. Who's? I asked. Desmond pulled up a file on his laptop, photo of a middle-aged man with tired eyes and cheap clothes. Von Trent, 40 years old, career forger operating in the Cincinnati-Nashville corridor. Arrested twice, never convicted. He specializes in high-quality identity documents, passports, medical records, custody papers. If Sterling needed forgeries, Trent is exactly who he'd use. Where's he? I asked. Cell tower triangulation puts him at the Sunset Motel in suburban Nashville, Desmond said, already typing. 20 minutes from here. I'm sending a tactical team now. The FBI moved with the efficiency I remembered from my own years in federal service. Within an hour, Desmond called from the motel. "We have him," he said. "Trent's cooperating, asking for a deal. You need to hear this." I drove to the Sunset Motel with Carl, the kind of place that charged by the hour and asked no questions. Desmond met us in the parking lot. "He's in room 12, Desmond said. When I showed my badge, he started talking immediately, hoping to reduce charges. What he's saying changes everything. Von Trent, a 40-year-old forger operating from cheap motels, had made a career out of creating false identities. Now he sat in a plastic chair in his dingy room, looking at federal agents with the desperate calculation of someone who'd finally been caught. "I'll tell you everything," Vaughn said before Desmond even asked. "Sterling Whitaker paid me $12,000 over 6 weeks for multiple document sets. I can show you the payment records." "What documents?" Desmond asked. "Fake passport under the name Sterling Morrison," Vaughn said. "Medical records showing Alzheimer's diagnosis. I used real doctor names to make it look legitimate. Spanish custody relinquishment papers with forged notary stamps. And the worst part," he hesitated, then continued, "child identification documents. Sterling gave me photos of 2 kids, girl about 7, boy about 5. He needed birth certificates, social security cards, medical records, said it was for international adoption paperwork. I made everything he asked for. Fake birth dates, fake social security numbers, fake vaccination records." Desmond leaned forward. "Where did those documents go?" "Sterling delivered them himself," Vaughn said. 3 weeks ago. Said they were going to someone named Petrov. I didn't ask questions. That's not my business." "You're saying Sterling gave a trafficking organization falsified documents?" Desmond asked carefully. "He cheated on them. The documents look real?" Vaughn said defensively. "But yeah, the information is fake. When they try to verify those social security numbers, when they check those birth certificates against state records, everything will come back as fraudulent. Sterling had built himself a perfect trap. The FBI closing in from one side with federal trafficking charges. Viktor Petrov's organization hunts him from the other side for cheating them with forged documents. My son was a mouse caught between 2 cats, and neither would show mercy." Desmond closed his notebook and looked at me with something almost like pity. "Your son is in more danger than he realizes," he said. "When Petrov's organization discovers those child documents are fake, and they will discover it probably before Friday, they won't just cancel the deal. They'll eliminate the liability. Sterling cheated them, stole their money, and wasted their time. In that world, that's a death sentence." I sat in that motel parking lot as the sun set over Nashville and realized I was racing to save my son's life even as I worked to put him in federal prison. The FBI would arrest him, but Petrov's people would kill him, and we had less than 48 hours to decide which happened first. At noon on Thursday, September 19th, 36 hours before Sterling's delivery deadline, I sat in an FBI tactical meeting and listened to Desmond Ortega explain why we should wait for my son to walk into our hands. And I knew with absolute certainty that waiting would get everyone killed. Overnight intelligence showed Petrov's organization growing suspicious. Sterling's communications revealed increasing pressure. The Madrid flight left tomorrow night. Every hour tightened the noose around Sterling's neck from both sides. Desmond stood at the conference table with a tactical map projected on the wall. "Standard procedure is passive surveillance until the subject moves," he said. "We track Sterling's residence, his office, the Millbrook Lane villa. When he moves toward the delivery location tomorrow night, we identify the transaction point and intercept with superior force. Clean federal arrest with trafficking evidence in real time." Simone took notes. Carl studied the map. I watched the plan and saw the fatal flaws. "What if he detects the surveillance?" Simone asked. "What if Petrov's people reach him first?" "Those are acceptable risks in a federal trafficking investigation," Desmond said. "Acceptable risks. My grandchildren were reduced to acceptable risks in someone else's protocol." "That plan gives Sterling too much control," I said. "We need to bring him to us, not chase him." Desmond looked at me. "Explain." "Sterling is too calculating," I said. "He's been one step ahead this entire time. Tracker in the teddy bear. False medical records prepared months ago. Madrid escape route already booked. If he suspects FBI surveillance for even a second, he runs. Triggers his escape plan tonight instead of tomorrow, and we lose him." I leaned forward. "And if Petrov discovers the fake documents first? They don't call lawyers. They execute liabilities. Sterling becomes a corpse before we can arrest him." "What are you proposing?" Carl asked. I'd been thinking about this since Vaughn's confession. Thinking about how Sterling saw me, How he described me to everyone? Senile, weak, manageable. I'll call him, I said. I act confused, disoriented, exactly the way he described me in his police report. I tell him I'm scared. I'm holding the children somewhere. I don't know how I got here. I want to come home. Simone's pen stopped. You're proposing to use his own lie against him. Pretend to have dementia. Sterling is desperate, I said. Caught between needing the children for Petrov and needing to silence me. If I call him confused and vulnerable, claiming to have his children, he'll come. He has to. For 3 days I'd been running from Sterling's surveillance, from police warrants, from the horror of discovery. But sitting in that FBI conference room, I stopped running. I'd spent 2 decades hunting criminals. Now it was time to remember how. He might see through the performance, Simone said. You're not actually confused. Sterling thinks he knows me, I corrected. He thinks I'm senile and weak. I'll give him exactly what he expects, a confused old man who's holding his grandchildren and doesn't understand what's happening. Someone he can manipulate, can control, and silence. Then when he arrives thinking he's found an easy solution, I'll give him handcuffs. Carl spoke for the first time. Lawrence spent 22 years in federal law enforcement. He designed operations that put organized crime figures in prison. He knows how to bait a trap. Desmond studied me with new understanding, seeing not a desperate grandfather but an experienced investigator, deploying professional skills against the most painful target of his career. Can you pull it off? Desmond asked. Can you sound convincingly confused? One wrong word and Sterling bolts? I thought about Monday morning in Vernon's garage. 4 days ago when this nightmare began. 4 days that had stripped away everything I thought I knew about Sterling. 4 days that had turned my family into evidence. 4 days that had made me the architect of my own son's arrest. I've designed 200 traps in 22 years, I said quietly. This is the first time I'm designing one for my own son. The room went quiet after I spoke. Everyone understood what I was really saying. I'm going to pretend to be the senile old man my son thinks I am, let him believe he's won, and then watch federal agents put him in handcuffs. It was the cruelest trap I'd ever designed, and it was the only way to save his life. Desmond nodded once and pulled up a map of Nashville's industrial district. We need a location Sterling will believe in, he said. Somewhere isolated enough for a confused old man to end up, but controlled enough for us to operate. I looked at the Cumberland River port warehouses marked on the map. 30 years ago, when Sterling was 7, I'd taken him fishing at the Cumberland River port, taught him to cast a line from the old dock. He'd caught his first fish and asked me what I did at work. I'd explained that I caught bad guys the way we were catching fish. Patience, the right bait. He'd said he wanted to be just like me when he grew up. I know exactly where to bring him, I said, pointing to the warehouse district. Cumberland River Port. Warehouses 3 through 7. Isolated industrial. Exactly where a confused old man might wander if he's disoriented. Desmond marked the location. I'll have tactical teams scouting it within the hour. When do you make the call? Carl asked. Tomorrow morning, I said. Friday. Give him just enough time to reach Nashville by tomorrow night. Not enough time to plan countermeasures. Just enough urgency to make him desperate. Tomorrow morning I would call my son, perform the role of the confused father he'd invented for me, and lure him to the place where his childhood ended and his federal prison sentence began. Through the two-way mirror, I watched Agent Ortega slide a photograph across the stainless steel table toward Soleil Sinclair. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp. For 3 heartbeats, she simply stared at the image Sterling boarding a flight to Madrid, a brunette woman beside him with expensive luggage and diamonds glinting at her throat. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across Soleil's face, turning her delicate features skeletal. That's Daniela Moretti, Simone Redmond said from her position against the wall, arms crossed. Photographed at Reagan National 2 hours ago. Your husband seems to have recovered from his distress remarkably well. I pressed closer to the glass. My breath fogged a small circle on the surface. The interrogation room smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee even through the barrier separating us. Agent Ortega had offered me a chair 20 minutes ago. I'd declined. Standing felt necessary, like sitting would make me complicit in something I couldn't yet name. Soleil's fingers trembled as she picked up the photograph. Her nail polish was chipped pale pink, the color of ballet slippers. The same shade Isla used to wear before she switched to coral last spring. I don't know her, Soleil whispered. We do. Ortega leaned forward, elbows on the table. Daniela Moretti, Italian national. art dealer based in Monaco. She's been Sterling's companion at 3 international conferences over the past 18 months. Geneva, Singapore, Dubai. The words landed like physical blows. I watched Soleil absorb each one, her spine straightening incrementally with every revelation. This was different from the defensive woman who'd arrived 90 minutes ago, escorted by 2 agents from the secluded villa. That Soleil had worn righteous indignation like armor, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that Sterling loved her, that whatever evidence they claimed to have was fabricated. This Soleil was something else entirely. 18 months, she repeated. Her voice had changed, flattened, emptied of inflection. Before me. Overlapping with you, Simone clarified. He took her to Geneva the same week you two met at that literacy fundraiser. The Singapore trip happened during your spring break last April. A sound escaped Soleil's throat, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. She set the photograph down with surgical precision, aligning its edges with the metal table's seam. Then she looked directly at the mirror, directly at me, though she couldn't possibly know I stood there. You want Sterling, she said, not me. We want the truth, Ortega replied. Then let's trade. The transformation happened in the space between one breath and the next. 90 seconds ago, Soleil had been a woman clinging to romantic delusions. Now she sat with the calculating poise of someone conducting a business negotiation. Her hands stilled. Her shoulders dropped. Even her face changed, not the features themselves, but the way she held them like a mask, removed to reveal machinery underneath. What are you offering? Simone asked carefully. Soleil tilted her head. Everything you need to find him. His patterns, his routines, the things he thinks nobody notices. She paused, fingers drumming once against the table. In exchange for immunity, full immunity, I walk out of here with nothing on my record. Ortega glanced toward the mirror, toward me, his eyebrows raised in silent questions. I nodded. We needed this. Whatever moral calculations I should be making about justice and consequences dissolved against the simple mathematics of necessity. Sterling had taken everything. If Soleil could give us the map to get it back, then yes. Immunity, forgiveness, whatever currency she demanded. We're listening, Ortega said. Soleil reached for the water bottle they'd provided, unscrewed the cap with steady hands, and drank deeply. When she set it down, her lipstick left a perfect imprint on the plastic rim. Sterling has obsessive-compulsive tendencies, she began. Not clinical, but patterns. He gets his suits dry cleaned every Tuesday at Apex Cleaners on West End Avenue. Always the same time, 6:15 p.m. He orders the same coffee every morning from the lobby, Starbucks. Venti Americano, 2 pumps of vanilla room for cream. He never varies, never. None of that helps us now, Simone interjected. He's already gone. I'm establishing context. Soleil's tone sharpened. Sterling needs control, needs redundancy. When he does something risky, he creates fail-safes, backup plans for his backup plans. My pulse accelerated. This was real intelligence. Not speculation, observation from someone who'd shared Sterling's bed, his secrets, his routines. 3 weeks ago, Soleil continued, he asked me to keep something safe for him. Said it was insurance. A USB drive with codes for offshore accounts, numbers, passwords, routing information. The air in the observation room changed density. Beside me, the technician monitoring the recording equipment straightened abruptly. Where Ortega's voice remained level, but his hands clenched beneath the table. The Millbrook Villa, Soleil said, hidden inside the false bottom of the executive desk in the study. A secured USB drive with codes for offshore accounts, numbers, passwords, routing information. The air in the observation room changed density. Beside me, the technician monitoring the recording equipment straightened abruptly. Where? Ortega's voice remained level, but his hands clenched beneath the table. The study upstairs, Soleil clarified. He kept it there. Said it was the last place anyone would look. He was right, wasn't he? Nobody searched that room yet. Ortega stood slowly. We need to retrieve that immediately before his people clean out the villa. 15 minutes before 200 children flooded those hallways, before parents arrived for pickup, before whatever window we had to retrieve, that USB drive closed completely. The USB drive was in evidence lockdown by 4 o'clock, retrieved from Soleil's classroom 12 minutes before dismissal. Now 3 hours later, I held the burner phone 6 inches from my face, rehearsing confusion in my breathing. Slower, Ortega said from across the command center table. Dementia patients lose word finding first. Pause before nouns. I tried again, letting my voice thin and waver. Son, I'm the place with the water. Good, now add fear, real fear. I didn't have to manufacture that part. The command center smelled like burnt coffee and electronic equipment. 4 FBI techs hunched over recording devices, headphones clamped tight. Outside the reinforced windows, Nashville's downtown lights blurred against gathering darkness. You ready? Ortega asked. I nodded. My hands felt steady. Everything inside vibrated at a frequency just below audible sound, but my fingers held the phone without trembling. Ortega gestured to the lead tech who activated the recording array. Red lights bloomed across the console. I dialed Sterling's burner number, the one Soleil had provided along with the USB drive codes, the dry cleaning schedule, the coffee order. 3 rings, 4. Yes. Sterling's voice came through crisp and irritated. Background noise suggested an airport or train station public transient untraceable. Son, I let the words stretch breathy and confused. I'm scared. The 2 children, I'm at the water place, where we used to fish. Silence. 2 seconds, 3. Then Sterling's voice shifted, the irritation smoothing into something artificially gentle. Dad, Dad, where are you exactly? I can't remember the name. The building by the river where you caught the fish with spots. Another pause. I could almost hear Sterling's mind working cross-referencing the symptoms against his fabricated diagnosis. Disorientation, word-finding difficulty, temporal confusion. He was recognizing his own script. The symptoms he'd designed were being performed back to him, and he believed them because he'd created their architecture. He thought I was deteriorating exactly as his falsified medical reports had predicted. The Cumberland warehouse. Sterling said, false concern dripping. Dad, stay exactly where you are. I'll come get you. When I can't remember how to get home. Soon, very soon, are Remy and Isla with you? The children. Yes. They're... I don't know why they're here. I think... Did you bring them? It's okay, Dad. Everything's okay. Just stay put. Don't let them leave. I'll be there. My throat tightened. Across the table, Ortega's jaw clenched. We both heard it, the calculation beneath Sterling's reassurance. Not love, not concerned. Strategy. I'm cold, I whispered. The water makes it cold. I know. I'll bring blankets. Just wait for me. The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully. The techs were already typing, tracking, triangulating. Ortega leaned back, eyes fixed on my face. Now we wait, he said quietly. The command center fell into suspended silence. Someone's coffee maker gurgled in the corner. I stared at the phone on the table at my reflection, distorted in its black screen. 29 years ago, I'd taught Sterling to fish at that warehouse pier. He'd been 8 years old, skinny and sunburned, his hands too small for the rod I'd bought him. Patient. That's what I'd tried to teach him that day. How to read the water, wait for the right moment to set the hook. Now I was the bait. Movement, one of the techs announced. He's calling out. Ortega shot forward. Root it through. The tech's fingers flew. A speaker crackled to life, and suddenly Sterling's voice filled the room, no longer gentle. Clinical. Businesslike. The old man is at the Cumberland warehouse, Sterling said. He has my children. Deal with him, retrieve them. A second voice, accented and rough. Deal with him how? Permanently. Make it look like he fell, dementia wandering. The kids don't see it happen. They're young. They'll be confused. They won't be reliable witnesses. Just separate them first, then handle it. Timeline. Tonight. He's disoriented. He won't last long in the cold anyway, but I can't risk him talking to authorities before 4 minutes. Sterling had needed exactly 4 minutes after hearing his father's frightened voice to call in a hit. No hesitation, no internal struggle, no moment where filial obligation wrestled with self-preservation. Just efficiency. The voices continued discussing logistics. Approach, vectors, extraction points, disposal methods. Sterling's tone never wavered. He discussed my murder the way he'd once discussed quarterly earnings. Same inflection, same detached professionalism. I thought about the 8-year-old boy who'd cried when he'd accidentally hooked his own thumb, who'd needed me to hold him while I worked the barb free, whispering that he was brave, that the pain would stop soon. That boy was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. He ordered my death the way normal people order pizza. No pause, no hesitation. The call ended. The speaker hissed empty static. I pulled the headphones off slowly, set them beside the phone. My hands were shaking now. The tremor I'd faked for Sterling had become real. Around me, the command center erupted into controlled chaos. Text calling out coordinates, deployment timelines. Ortega barks orders into his phone, assembling the trap team. His hand landed on my shoulder, warm, solid, real. "You okay?" he asked. I looked up at him. "I just heard my son order my execution. No, I'm not okay. But the trap worked." Ortega's grip tightened briefly, then released. He moved to the tactical map spread across the far table, downtown Nashville, rendered in precise topographical detail. A red pin marked the Cumberland River Warehouse District. He leaned forward, eyes tracking approach routes. "Petrov's people will move fast. We have maybe 6 hours to position our team before they arrive. 6 hours. 360 minutes to turn my son's murder plot into his arrest warrant." I stared at the red pin marking the warehouse, the place where I'd once taught Sterling. Patience, where he'd learned to read the water and wait for the right moment to strike. Where he thought he'd finally removed the last obstacle between himself and complete freedom. By midnight, the FBI tactical team was en route to the warehouse. I had one stop to make first. Isla opened the safe house door wearing her pajamas, and asked the question I'd been dreading. "Where are you going, Grandpa?" She stood backlit by the hallway light, butterfly patterns on her pink pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. Behind her, Cressida appeared in the doorway, took one look at my face, and understood immediately. "You're going tonight?" she said, not a question. "Yes." Isla ran forward and wrapped her arms around my waist. I felt the impact of her small body against mine, the warmth of her through the fabric of my coat. 6 years old, she smelled like grape toothpaste and children's shampoo. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. Her face was level with mine, brown eyes studying me with the kind of attention children reserve for moments they know matter. "I'm going to take care of something," I said carefully. "When I come back, everything will be all right." Her eyes narrowed slightly. She was reading me the way she read picture books, slowly, deliberately catching every detail. Children have radar for adult lies. They might not understand the full truth, but they know when they're being protected from it. "Are you going to see Daddy?" she asked. The question landed like a physical blow. Cressida's hand went to her mouth. I could lie. I should lie. Tell her I was meeting with lawyers, with FBI agents, with anyone except the man who'd abandoned her. But Isla's eyes held mine, and I couldn't do it. "Yes," I said. She nodded, once processing this. "Is he coming back with you?" "I don't know, sweetheart." "Okay," she whispered, then quieter. "I hope you come back." "I will, I promise." Movement in the hallway. Remy appeared barefoot, wearing his superhero pajamas. He held something small and brown clutched against his chest, a teddy bear different from the one Sterling had taken. This one was smaller, worn at the edges, missing one button eye. He walked directly to me and held it out. "Keep the little bear with you, Grandpa," he said solemnly. I took it carefully, the way you'd accept something fragile and irreplaceable. The fabric was soft, matted from years of being loved. Remy's security object. The thing he slept with every night. "I will—" I managed. My voice cracked on the second word. "I promise." "Then you'll be safe," Remy said with absolute 4-year-old certainty. As if the universe worked on simple rules. Carry the teddy bear, come home. Safe. Cause and effect. The logic of childhood faith. I pulled both of them close, one arm around each grandchild. Felt Isla's face press against my shoulder. Remy's fingers grip my sleeve. Memorized the weight of them, the way they fit against me, the sound of their breathing. 3 ounces of polyester stuffing in my hand. Heavier than everything else I was carrying tonight. Heavier than the wire I'd wear. The evidence I'd collect, the trap I'd help spring. This wasn't about justice anymore. Not really. It was about these 2 children growing up without their father's poison spreading into their bloodstreams. It was about breaking the chain. I released them slowly and stood. Cressida walked me to the door, while Isla and Remy watched from the hallway 2 small figures in pajamas. At the threshold, Cressida put her hand on my arm. Her grip was strong, not gentle, not tentative. The grip of someone who'd survived her own battles. "Come back," she said. "I will." "That's not a promise. That's an order." I looked at her, my daughter-in-law, who'd lost her husband to greed and betrayal, who'd held her children together through the wreckage. Warrior to warrior. "Yes, ma'am," I said. She released my arm. I walked to the car without looking back. If I looked back, I might not leave. At 12:15 a.m. Ortega met me at the warehouse staging area, a vacant lot 3 blocks from the Cumberland River port. A van sat with its back doors open, equipment cases spread across the interior. "Second button," Ortega said, holding up a dress shirt. "Camera and mic. Don't look down, don't touch it. Speak normally." "What if he searches me?" I asked. "Then we move early. But Sterling thinks you're demented and harmless. He won't be careful. I changed into the prepared shirt, buttoned it slowly. The second button looked identical to the others. Navy blue plastic, 4 holes, standard men's dress shirt hardware. Impossible to distinguish. The wire ran down inside the packet, invisible. Ortega handed me an earpiece so small it disappeared inside my ear canal. We'll hear everything you hear. You'll hear us only if we need to abort. And if you don't abort, then trust the process. Let it play out. By 1 a.m., the FBI team deployed around the warehouse perimeter. I watched them move shadows within shadows. Weapons strapped tight, communication gear dark and silent. Rooftop positions, cargo container blinds, river access points. Within 10 minutes, I couldn't see any of them. We're ghosts now, Ortega said beside me. You won't see us. But we're there. How will I know when... You'll know. Trust the process. He gripped my shoulder once, then disappeared into the darkness. I walked into the warehouse alone. The interior was vast, an empty concrete floor. Steel beam ceiling, 3 stories up windows painted black decades ago. A single folding chair sat in the center under a battery-powered lantern. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody heard. I sat down, placed Remy's teddy bear on the chair arm, waited. 2:30 a.m. The silence pressed against my eardrums like water pressure. Somewhere outside, 8 FBI agents watched through night vision. Somewhere in the world, Sterling was moving toward this moment, calculating, planning, believing his demented father was vulnerable and alone. Bait doesn't catch the fish. Bait gets eaten. The hook is what matters. I was the thing that would be consumed, so the predator would reveal itself. Not strategy, not tactic. Sacrifice. I closed my eyes, held the teddy bear. Unbidden a memory surfaced. September 1990. Hospital room at Vanderbilt. The nurse placing 7-pound newborn into my arms for the first time. Sterling. Tiny, red-faced, perfect. His fingers had wrapped around my thumb with impossible strength. 34 years ago, these hands held 7 pounds of possibility. Tonight, they held 3 ounces of love from the children he'd abandoned. The same hands, the same man. But the infant had become something I didn't recognize. At 3:47 a.m., my earpiece crackled with Ortega's voice. 2 vehicles approaching from the east. ETA 4 minutes. I placed Remy's teddy bear carefully on the chair arm and stood. The hook was set. The first vehicle held Petrov's men. The second Sterling, alone, confident, walking into what he believed was certainty. My son's footsteps echoed across the warehouse concrete at exactly 5:07 a.m. 34 years of fatherhood, ending in those 12 deliberate steps. He came through the east door, a flashlight beam cutting through darkness like a surgical instrument. The light found me first, then swept the perimeter, checking corners, exits, threat, assessment. Professional, thorough, the way I'd taught him to evaluate situations when he was 12. The beam returned to my face. I didn't squint or look away, just sat on the wooden chair with Remy's teddy bear on the armrest waiting. Dad Sterling's voice carried artificial warmth. It's me. I came to get you. I remained silent, watching. He approached cautiously. Footsteps measured. 20 feet. 15. The flashlight lowered slightly so it wasn't directly in my eyes, a gesture of false compassion. Are you okay? You called about the fishing spot. I stood. No tremor in my hands, no confusion in my eyes, no halting search for words. I know why you've come, Sterling. The flashlight dropped 2 inches. In that small movement, I saw his entire recalculation happen. Threat assessment, revision strategy, pivot, mask, selection. You're not... Confused, demented, no. I never was. Silence filled the warehouse like water filling a hull. Sterling's face, half shadowed by the flashlight's backscatter, underwent a transformation. The concerned son expression dissolved. What replaced it was something I'd glimpsed in boardrooms, in negotiation meetings, in the moment before he closed a deal that destroyed someone's livelihood. Complete honesty, finally. How long have you known? He asked. His voice had changed, no more warmth, no more false gentleness, just cold efficiency. Since Catherine found the account statements in March. He nodded, slowly processing. Then why the performance, the confused phone call? To bring you here. What? I didn't answer. Let him work it through. Sterling set the flashlight on the ground, pointing upward, so it illuminated both our faces from below. Theatrical lighting. He wanted to see my expressions clearly. You think you can fix this? He said. Not a question. Talk me into returning the money, turning myself in, begging Cressida for forgiveness. That's why you're here. The father-son conversation. The appeal to morality. No, I said quietly. I know exactly who you are now. Something flickered across his face. Not shame, not regret. Curiosity. Cressida signed those forms without reading them, he said as if explaining a simple business transaction. The 847,000 was mine to take, technically legal, just strategically timed. With forged signatures, I said. He shrugged. Details. Petrov's organization understands business better than any legitimate firm. They don't burden themselves with regulations, oversight, or moral hand-wringing. They see opportunity and execute. That's real capitalism. In Madrid, flight leaves tomorrow. New identity, new life. Daniela doesn't ask questions the way Soleil did. Doesn't need emotional reassurance like Cressida. She understands transactions. He spoke with the pride of someone describing a successful acquisition. No shame. No hesitation. Just arrogant certainty that he'd outplayed everyone. Sterling stepped closer. The warehouse floor creaked beneath his expensive shoes. You think you can stop me? His voice dripped with contempt now, the last pretense abandoned. Your old senile nothing. Even if you went to the police tomorrow with some story about embezzlement, I'd be in Madrid before they filed paperwork. You're too late, Dad. You've always been too late. Nothing. Not even anger in his voice. Just a fact. The way you describe weather or traffic conditions. I was an obstacle already, bypassed a problem already solved. He genuinely believed it. No performance, no exaggeration. Pure truth. I glanced down at the second button on my shirt, then back to Sterling's face. You just said it all, I said quietly. Sterling's eyes followed my glance downward, focused on the button. For 3 seconds he stared at it, ordinary navy plastic 4 holes, identical to 6 others on my shirt. Then comprehension dawned across his face like sunrise. You recording every word I said. Petrov, Madrid, Cressida. The 847,000, forged signatures, all of it. His hand moved toward me. Whether to rip the button off or strike me, I never found out. 8 massive spotlights exploded to life, simultaneously flooding the warehouse with brightness that turned night into noon. Sterling spun flashlight forgotten on the ground as FBI agents emerged from positions I couldn't see, even knowing they were there. Rooftops, cargo containers, doorways, shadows resolving into armed figures in tactical gear. Desmond Ortega walked forward from the main entrance badge held high. Sterling Whitaker, FBI. You are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Sterling turned back to me, eyes wide. You did this. You did this, I replied. 18 months ago. He looked past me toward the warehouse windows. Through the grimy glass flashing blue and red lights illuminated 2 men in handcuffs beside their vehicles. Petrov's people surrounded by federal agents. Petrov's people are in custody, Ortega said, moving closer. Your flight to Madrid was flagged hours ago. The accounts are frozen. It's over. Sterling's expression shifted through rage, disbelief, calculation, searching for an exit that didn't exist. Finally, something that might have been despair. He looked at me. Why? The question was almost childlike, as if he genuinely couldn't comprehend why I'd done this. Because you took my grandchildren, I said. An agent moved forward with handcuffs. Sterling didn't resist, just stood motionless as his arms were pulled behind his back. The metal closed around his wrists with a single click. One click. 34 years of fatherhood ending in one mechanical click. I picked up Remy's teddy bear from the chair arm and placed it carefully on the seat. Turned toward the warehouse exit without looking back at Sterling. Behind me, I heard him call out, Dad! I kept walking. Didn't turn. Didn't stop. Ortega's voice. Let's go. Footsteps moving in the opposite direction, agents escorting Sterling toward the waiting vehicles, toward processing, toward the federal system that would decide his fate. I reached the warehouse door as sunrise broke over the Cumberland River. Orange light spilled across the water, the same color that had illuminated this dock when Sterling was 8 years old, when I'd taught him patience and how to read the current. Ortega's hand landed on my shoulder, stopping me at the threshold. We need you to identify the evidence for processing, he said quietly. I looked at the sunrise, then at Remy's teddy bear in my hand. Yes, I said, I know. The evidence processing took 3 hours. By the time I left FBI headquarters that Friday morning, Sterling was already in federal custody awaiting arraignment. 14 months after the warehouse arrest, I sat in courtroom 3, watching my son's defense attorney argue that I had entrapped him. The federal courthouse in Nashville smelled like floor polish and recycled air. November sunlight filtered through high windows, illuminating dust particles that drifted like snow. I sat beside Cressida in the gallery, our shoulders not touching but close enough to share warmth. Sterling sat at the defense table in an orange prison uniform, back straight face, expressionless. Soleil Sinclair sat 3 rows behind us on the prosecution witness list. Agent Ortega and Simone Redmond occupied the back row federal witnesses waiting their turn. Federal Judge Patricia Holbrook entered 62 years old. Silver hair pulled into a severe bun, 30 years of courtroom authority, radiating from her black robes, like heat from asphalt. All rise, the bailiff announced. United States versus Sterling James Whitaker. Cressida's hand found mine. Her fingers were ice cold. You okay? She whispered. No, I said, but I'm here. Sterling's attorney stood expensive suit, confident posture, the kind of lawyer you hire when you have nothing left but procedural arguments and manufactured sympathy. Your Honor, he began, my client is a victim of manipulation orchestrated by his own father. Lawrence Whitaker fabricated a mental illness to manipulate his son into incriminating statements. Sterling Whitaker believed his father was suffering from dementia and responded with filial compassion only to discover he'd been deceived into a recording operation. I watched Sterling's face. He didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, playing the role his attorney had written for him. Furthermore, the attorney continued, Ms. Soleil Sinclair coerced my client into financial arrangements he didn't fully understand. She exploited his trust, his marriage difficulties, his concern for his aging father. Sterling Whitaker is a victim of circumstance, Your Honor, not a criminal mastermind. The prosecution called Soleil to the stand. She walked to the witness box, wearing a conservative navy suit, her posture perfect, the elementary school teacher who'd spent 14 months cooperating with federal investigators in exchange for immunity. She looked different from the woman I'd watched through the interrogation mirror, harder, clearer. The prosecutor, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray eyes, approached the stand. Ms. Sinclair, who initiated the financial fraud scheme? Sterling Whitaker, Soleil said without hesitation. I provided assistance, but he designed every element. The forged signatures on his wife's accounts, the offshore transfers, the partnership with Petrov's organization, and the plan to eliminate his father. Sterling contacted the Petrov organization independently. I had no involvement in that decision. I learned about it only when the FBI played me the intercepted phone call. Her voice never wavered, clinical, precise. The woman who'd loved Sterling enough to betray her marriage is now destroying his defense with the same methodical efficiency she probably used to grade spelling tests. The prosecutor nodded. The prosecution would like to enter into evidence the button camera recording from September 20th, 2024. The courtroom screens flickered to life. Sterling's voice filled the room, not tinny or distorted, but crystal clear through the sound system. The warehouse, the darkness, my question, and Madrid. His answer, flight leaves tomorrow, new identity, new life. Then the confession I'd waited months to hear played publicly. Cressida signed those forms without reading them. The $847,000 was mine to take. Technically legal, just strategically timed. Petrov's organization understands business better than any legitimate firm. And finally, the words that had broken something inside me. You think you can stop me, your old senile nothing. Nothing. The word I'd heard in darkness now broadcast to 200 strangers through courtroom speakers. Jurors' faces hardened. Spectators shifted. Sterling's attorney stared at his notes. The private wound made public record. Court recessed for jury deliberation at 1:15 p.m. Cressida, the FBI team, and I waited in the hallway on wooden benches that reminded me of church pews. The resemblance felt appropriate. Both places where you waited for judgment. 47 minutes, Ortega said when the bailiff called us back. That's fast. The recording left no doubt, Cressida replied. The jury foreman stood a middle-aged man with carpenter's hands and reading glasses perched on his nose. On the count of wire fraud, how do you find it? Guilty. On the count of embezzlement. Guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. Guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. 4 words. 47 minutes of deliberation. 14 months of investigation. 18 months of Sterling's lies. All reduced to that single word repeated 4 times. Judge Holbrook called for victim impact statements before sentencing. I approached the podium. My prepared statement was 2 paragraphs typed the night before on Cressida's computer. My hands shook holding the paper. Your Honor, I began, I'm not here to speak about my pain. I'm here to speak about two children. I looked at the page, then at Judge Holbrook. Isla is 7 years old. She draws family pictures where everyone is smiling, even though her father hasn't been home in 14 months. Remy is 5. He believes in superheroes because he hasn't learned yet that sometimes fathers are villains. My voice cracked. I steadied it. Sterling Whitaker used his children as leverage. He threatened to take them where I'd never find them. Not because he loved them, because they were merchandise, bargaining chips, tools. I folded the paper. They are not merchandise. They are not leveraged. They are human beings, and they deserve to grow up knowing their grandfather chose them over his son. I sat down. Cressida's hand found mine again. Justice is the gavel falling. Healing is what comes after. I have one, not the other. Judge Holbrook adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Sterling. Sterling James Whitaker, you are sentenced to 22 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Additionally, I am ordering full restitution of all embezzled funds and a permanent restraining order prohibiting contact with your children. She paused, consulting her notes. For the record, Victor Petrov, the criminal organization leader who partnered with you, has been extradited and sentenced separately to 35 years. Ms. Soleil Sinclair's plea agreement stands all charges dismissed in exchange for testimony. The gavel rose, fell. The sound echoed in my chest like a second heartbeat. This court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, November air bit through my coat. Cressida touched my arm. The kids are waiting at the house, she said quietly. They want to see you. I looked at her. Isla was 7 now. Remy 5. Both growing up in Sterling's absence, shaped by the hole he'd left behind. Do they know? I asked. They know he's gone, Cressida answered. They don't need to know why. Not yet. 3 weeks later, Cressida's new apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility scents I'd forgotten existed. She stood in the doorway of the 2-bedroom place on the east side of Nashville. December sunlight streaming through windows overlooking a small park. Modest, clean, hers. Simone and Vernon helped me find it, she said. Vernon knows the hiring manager at the accounting firm. Got my resume to the top of the pile. Vernon Reyes, my dear old friend from the garage, had been a total rock for us coordinating whatever connections he had left in the area to help her relocation. I start January 2nd, Cressida continued. Accounting. What I studied before? She trailed off. I finished it. Before Sterling forbade it. She nodded. He controlled that too, I said. Everything, Cressida replied. What I wore, who I saw, whether I could take a bookkeeping job at the kids' school. But not anymore. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Remy burst into the kitchen, 5 years old, wearing a superhero t-shirt. My room, he shouted, grabbing my hand. Grandpa, come see my room. He pulled me down the hall to a small bedroom painted pale blue. Twin bed against one wall, boxes of toys in the corner, solar system poster above the headboard. It's mine, Remy said with absolute ownership. Nobody else's, just mine. Isla appeared in the doorway, 7 years old, purple sweater hair and butterfly clips. Mine has a window that sees the park, she said. I can watch the swings from my bed. Cressida stood behind them, watching her children claim space untainted by Sterling's presence. First place that's actually ours, she said. I stayed in the doorway while they showed me treasures. Remy's action figures, Isla's rock collection, the bookshelf Simone had donated. Normal childhood things in normal rooms. After an hour, Cressida walked me to the front door. I stood at the threshold, 1 foot in, 1 out. Dad, come in, she said. Sit down. I'll make coffee. I shook my head. This is your home, not mine. You helped make this possible. I just need to know you're okay, I said. And you are. She studied my face, then nodded. We're getting there. I stood at that doorway and realized I'd been standing at the periphery of Cressida's life for years. Always at the edge, never central. Sterling had made sure of that. The difference now, she was inviting me in, and I was choosing to stay at the edge. Not exclusion. Respect. I typed back, you too, Catherine. Then folded Isla's drawing, placed it in my jacket pocket, and drove toward Nashville. Spring came to Nashville with dogwood blossoms and the first picnic where no one mentioned Sterling's name. I spread the blanket under a maple tree while Cressida unpacked sandwiches from the wicker basket. The park smelled like cut grass and honeysuckle sweetness layered over earth. May sunshine filtered through new leaves, dappling the ground in shifting patterns. Vernon Reyes arrived carrying 2 folding chairs, setting them up with practiced efficiency. Brought extra chairs, he said. Figured we'd stay a while. We usually do, Cressida replied, smiling. The kids love this park. Thanks for coming, I said. Vernon had become a regular presence over the past 5 months. Sunday dinners, school concerts, the ordinary architecture of family life rebuilt from rubble, not replacing what was lost, just present for what remained. Isla and Remy chased each other across the grass, 8 and 6 now, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. Isla's hair flew behind her in long dark waves. Remy wore his favorite superhero, cape red fabric, streaming as he ran. After lunch, Isla stood on the blanket and announced, "Grandpa, close your eyes and listen." I obeyed. I heard her take a breath. She sang a song learned in 2nd grade, something about rivers and mountains and finding your way home. Off-key but enthusiastic, every note, carrying the absolute confidence of childhood performance. Remy provided percussion by slapping this picnic basket in rhythm. When she finished, I opened my eyes. Vernon and Cressida applauded. "Beautiful," I said. "When's the concert?" "June 12th. You have to come." "I'll be there." Remy climbed into my lap, clutching something brown and familiar. The teddy bear, the same one he'd given me before the warehouse trap. 18 months ago it had held FBI tracking technology. Now it just held stuffing and love. "Mama fixed him," Remy said, pointing to stitches along the bear's side where Cressida had mended a torn seam. "See the stitches." I traced them with my finger, small, careful, visible. "Those are brave stitches. Shows he survived something." Remy looked up at me with solemn eyes. "Like us." The words landed with weight far beyond a 6-year-old's understanding. Or maybe exactly within it. Children knew things adults pretended to forget. "Yes," I said, "like us." While the children played on the nearby swings, Vernon and I sat in comfortable silence. He'd guided us through victim services, court proceedings, transition assistance, the bureaucratic machinery that helped broken families find footing again. "They're doing well," he said, finally watching Isla push Remy on the swing. "Because of people like you," I replied. "Because of people like you who didn't give up?" We exchanged a single nod, gratitude without words needing to be spoken. Two protectors recognizing each other across the landscape of survival. I watched Remy clutch his mended bear and understood something I'd been circling for months. This was what healing looked like. Not erasure of scars, not pretending the trauma never happened, but survival with visible stitches. The bear had kept us safe through the worst night. Now it was just a bear again, loved, mended, carried. Healing doesn't mean unmarked. It means stitched back together and loved anyway. Later, as afternoon sun slanted golden across the park, Isla sat beside me on the blanket. 8 years old, perceptive in ways that sometimes startled me. "Grandpa," she said, picking at a blade of grass, "are you happy?" I paused. "Consider the honest answer instead of the comfortable one." "I'm learning to be happy again, honey," I said carefully. "Some days are easier than others." She nodded, processing this. "That's okay, me too." Children understood gradual healing better than adults pretended. They didn't need false reassurance. They needed truth scaled to their capacity to carry it. "We're doing it together," I said. "Yeah," Isla agreed. Then she jumped up and ran back to the swings. That evening at Cressida's apartment, Isla sat at the kitchen table with crayons spread like a rainbow. I washed dishes while Cressida put away leftovers. Through the window, dogwood petals drifted past like snow. Isla worked silently for 10 minutes, tongue between her teeth in concentration. Finally, she pushed the paper toward me. 4 figures holding hands. Grandfather, mother, girl, boy. Labels in careful print. Grandpa, Mama, me, Remy. No 5th person. "This is our family now," Isla said. I studied the drawing. Simple crayon figures. Yellow sun overhead. Green grass beneath. Complete. "It's beautiful," I said. Isla leaned against my arm. "Grandpa, I feel safer here." I placed my hand gently on her head, remembering 18 months ago on the airplane when she'd asked, "Are we safe?" Then a question born from fear. Now a statement about healing. On the airplane she asked if we were safe. Now she tells me she feels safer. Different questions. Same child learning to trust again. "I'm glad," I whispered. Later, alone on the apartment porch, I took the old drawing from my jacket, the one from Cincinnati, 3 years old, showing a family of 5 with Sterling smiling. Placed it beside Isla's new drawing on the porch railing. 2 drawings, 2 worlds. One had Sterling smiling the father she'd wanted drawn in hope and imagination. One had empty space where he should have been the father who'd left, acknowledged in absence. Both were true. I carefully folded both drawings. Didn't choose one. Didn't discard either. Placed both in my breast pocket, against my heart. What was lost and what remained carried together. You don't choose between grief and hope. You carry both. I looked at Nashville's skyline under the spring stars. thought about Sterling in federal prison, 19 years remaining on his sentence. Cressida had legally reclaimed her maiden name, completely cutting the final threads to his deception. The Cincinnati house was sold, the furniture scattered to strangers, leaving no remnants of the life he tried to destroy. Then thought about Isla, singing off key about finding her way home. Remy's mended bare with brave stitches. Cressida's accounting job started her first career at 44. Vernon's quiet support rebuilding trust in human goodness. Family redefined. Family isn't who you're born to. Family is who stays when darkness comes and remains at dawn. Inside, Remy called through the screen door, "Grandpa, are you staying for bedtime?" I folded both drawings one final time and stood. "Yes," I said, "I'm staying." Stepping back into the warmth of the brightly lit kitchen, I watched the rhythmic amber glow of the television set casting long, tranquil shadows against the freshly painted walls, a serene domestic tableau that felt entirely divorced from the cold concrete and flashing sirens of my past life. It was a quiet transformation, this slow assembly of peace from the fragmented shards of a broken lineage, proving that survival was never about forgetting the storm, but about learning how to anchor oneself in the calm that followed. For decades, my identity had been bound to the rigid parameters of evidence and pursuit. But looking at the simple crayon drawing resting securely on the counter, I finally understood that my most profound assignment wasn't the capture of a criminal, but the quiet preservation of this fragile, newfound sanctuary. The weight in my chest, once a dense anvil of grief and calculation, had subtly shifted into something resembling a quiet, enduring fortitude. Tomorrow would inevitably bring its own reminders of what had been severed. But tonight, as the distant laughter of my grandchildren echoed softly from the hallway, I simply pulled the door shut, locking out the shadows for good. Standing there in the quiet sanctuary of their laughter, I realized that the legacy I was leaving behind was no longer measured by the dark conspiracies I had unraveled, or the grim evidence logs I had processed during my decades in law enforcement, but by the fierce, unyielding protection of the innocent souls who now looked up at me for their ultimate safety. My hands, once trained solely to grip cold steel and tighten handcuffs on desperate criminals, were finally learning the delicate art of holding a family together, anchoring our fragile lives against any future storms that might dare to approach. And to you listening to my story, remember this. I spent 34 years building trust with my son, and I missed every warning sign until it was almost too late. I didn't want to believe that someone I raised could become a stranger. My mistake was choosing hope over evidence for too long. Don't make that mistake. When family betrayal shows itself, acknowledge it. Protecting the innocent matters more than protecting your illusions about the guilty. This journey taught me that family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by who stays when darkness comes. My dad revenge family story isn't about hatred. It's about protection. When family betrayal, revenge becomes necessary. It's not about destruction. It's about building something safer from the ruins. I believe God gives us strength exactly when we need it most. He gave me courage to face the truth about Sterling and wisdom to protect Isla and Remy. The lesson. Sometimes the most loving choice looks like the hardest betrayal. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced family betrayal? Revenge in your own life? What would you have done in my situation? Share this dad, revenge, family story with someone who needs to hear it. If you're new here, please subscribe to Dad's Sweet Revenge for more stories about choosing protection over pretense. Your comments matter, every single one. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means everything to me. Final reminder, this dad, revenge, family story contains fictionalized elements for reflection and learning. Any resemblance to real people or events regarding family betrayal. Revenge is coincidental. What matters is the message about protecting those who cannot protect themselves.